Bu is the heavenly demon reborn in a weak young body, and this new era greets him with a public offer from the demonic martial alliance. They teach demonic arts to anyone with talent, no faction strings attached, so why does a former throne holder feel like the world has gotten uglier? The alliance's open door promise curdles when the order lands on Bu himself. Kill Manhua, the wanderer hero. The black-robed man looks aside, serious, because this is no harmless test anymore. Talent is being measured with a life on the line. While the reborn demon weighs that order, the word kill lands hardest on someone else. That word hits Siola, the only girl in the stretch, hard enough that she grabs her own collar. In her memory, she reaches back to the day her grandfather Bu Jianyang found her abandoned in a snowy field and took her hand. That was the first home she remembers. Years earlier, in Bu Jianyang's care, young Sola studies corpses instead of toys. She points out a dead swordsman's style, and the old man tests her by asking why. Sola beams and says the upward cut gives away the heaven-cutting sword. The lessons do not stay gentle. Sola shakes under her blanket at night, but Bu Jianyang watches her with the patience of a man training a child for a cruel world. No soft landing here. At home, Bu Jianyang turns even corpse work into a game so Sola can endure it. He calls for her, and she pops up through the slats with an eager yes, desperate to please the man who raised her. The memory still hurts. Then the memory turns violent. Under the moon, a swordsman faces a hooded figure in broken bamboo and recognizes him as Bu Jianyang, the seven-bladed demon. The swordsman moves to draw first, but Bu Jianyang stays still, turning the standoff into a fight he may already control. Bu Jianyang stands with blood running from beneath his robes, still gripping his sword. Bu appears in that old wound of a memory, furious that Bu Jianyang refused the Vice Lord's seat of Demon Hall, a demonic organization hunting successors through brutal trials. Bu thinks he threw away power for this? The accusation breaks open. Bu Jianyang refused that seat and survived by doing the work others spit on. Bu Jianyang answers with one reason. He is atoning. Bu pushes the fight, expecting shame to crack Bu Jianyang first. But the next second, Bu Jianyang accepts it cleanly and raises his blade. He chooses the punishment himself. Back in Sela's memory, the fight leaves her staring at blood and a body that will not rise. Her breath breaks into a raw, helpless sound as she realizes the person who protected her has fallen. Too late. Years before all this, Sola screams for Bu Jianyang as he drops under the bamboo. He tries to understand the wound tearing him apart, and the only answer in front of him is the child shaking beside him. Bu Jianyang hears Sola's voice and reaches for her through the blood. Sola breaks when he mistakes her for another woman, and she chokes out that they did this. Bu Jianyang spends his last breath on the woman he still wants to follow into death. Sola hears it all with blood on her hands, and the grove goes quiet around him. Too late. Then the killing strike finishes, and Bu Jianyang lies in his own blood. Sola can only whisper for her grandfather while her hand reaches for a body that will not answer. Back in the present, Bu stands in the blood and starts reading the wound like a battle record. He thinks, wait, why are both arms gone before the final cut? The first answer points to that rare upward sword stroke from below. Bu expects a clean sword kill, the kind a skilled killer would leave behind. But the next second, the eye wound changes the whole read. The attack does not just rise, it pierces straight through the eye, and Sela's own stare hardens as the name comes to her, a demonic-type sword art. The hooded killer stands over the fallen body, and Bu stops treating him like a lone attacker. This guy sees the pattern now. An accomplice or something worse moved with him. Bu checks under the tongue and finds the discoloration that a normal blade would never leave. He thinks poison too? Then this was never just sword work. See, rotten flesh, decayed blood, poison leaves signs inside the body, not just on the wound. The killers also know heavenly yoga and carry the one absolute realm, an incense memory device. Which brings us right back to Bu's problem. This murder has a sex fingerprints all over it. The clues keep stacking into one ugly shape, a demonic path figure using poison, foreign arts, and memory tools together. Bu holds on that profile because whoever did this did not come here to leave survivors. Sayala stays beside Bu Jianyang's body, and the order in her heart turns simple. Through the blood in her eye, she burns one command into herself. Definitely find them. Back in the present elsewhere, a bearded man hears the Blazing Sun sect name and laughs it off as some passing cult. Bu's faction is already being dismissed before he even walks in. Years before all this, the memory opens with Sawala already bleeding from the mouth while a man watches her closely. Her red eyes flare through the blood, showing this is not a quiet setback, but the moment her resolve turns dangerous. The elder sweats as that bloody mark lands, because Sela is not backing down. She rises with her eyes burning and treats this vow as the first step toward the person she has to become. Still in the past, one name hangs over everything. Hong Suho, the man behind her grandfather's death. Someone mutters that Hong Suho must be an immeasurable master, and Sela stares at that shadow knowing she cannot even reach him yet. So Sola fixes on one answer: become a demon's successor. If she wants power fast, the Demon Hall trial is the only road open to her. At the trial grounds, Golden Arm Blood Eyes Hayo Krionung steps in as chief instructor. The young candidates tense up as the masked escort says the masters of Demon Heaven will judge their bones and muscles first. first. Sayla reaches the first stone marker and freezes. She thinks, wait, this is a gate? The gatekeeper calls her through before she can decide whether this is a contest or a butcher's counter. The gatekeeper tests her without warning, and everyone expects one clean rejection. But the next second, the strike drops her hard, and the verdict is colder than the hit. Her bones and muscles are completely ruined. A wide-hatted onlooker says it is a wonder she even entered the contest. A red-eyed woman glares, and Sayla tears up as the crowd hears the brutal point. She is being treated as unfit to compete at all. The wide-hatted man clicks his tongue and still lets her follow. Sayla grips the wrapped sword, remembering the only training she ever had, washing corpses while an old mortician worked beside her. That memory hits ugly. She trembles, then snaps, demanding how a demon successor contest can pretend to be fair if the first cut is only bones and muscles. See, the trial's rule is simple. Martial arts begin with the body. The instructor says bones and muscles come first, which brings us right back to Sola, standing there with one damaged body and one last chance. Byu Yunsol's eye flashes as he senses the threat in front of them. He grits his teeth, gathers golden energy, and tells the others not to worry, taking the pressure onto himself. Byu forces his strength open as the second gate begins. This guy roars through the pressure, and the trial stops feeling like an exam. Inside the second gate, Byu braces as the trial pressure bears down on him. The elder announces the next test, and the fur-cloaked examiner makes the rule plain. The candidates must fight each other and survive until only one remains. That rule lands cold. One injured candidate finally understands the trap and tightens his grip. Byu watches the room turn hungry and thinks, only one remains? Then blades start rising before anyone can talk themselves calm. The first attacks come fast, and Sayla flinches as blood starts answering the rule. A swordsman cuts deep into a beast-like shape, and another wound opens across a fighter's shoulder before the crowd can even settle. No warm-up. A bloodthirsty fighter grins at his old target and says he can finally kill him today. The wounded man snarls Wei Unchung's name, but the strike slips past his ribs and drives for the heart instead. He stares through the blood, stunned that his enemy aimed to finish him clean. A spear-wielding candidate plants a corpse in front of everyone and dares the rest to come closer. Byu reads the mistake at once. Looking dangerous only paints a target on your own back. The watching candidates panic first, then freeze, then start measuring how far away they are from that spear. One terrified candidate swings down screaming for another man's death. He expects the blow to scare everyone back, but the next second blood sprays and he chokes out that he did not mean to do it. Byu steps through the blood-soaked ground as the young killer loses control. When the kid's fist comes flying, our boy catches it bare-handed and stops him there. Byu thinks, so killing is not the key here? The elder's voice cuts over the chaos. Young fighters who do not know death lose their reason fastest. The gate proves him right as screams break out everywhere, but the formal-hatted observer notices a few candidates still thinking. Even the blindfolded, bleeding man admits some of them are not complete fools. Sayla wipes blood from her face and keeps her sword ready, forcing herself through the fear instead of running. Below the tall tower, the second gate spreads into a full battlefield, and survival is no longer a rule on paper. It is happening under their feet. The Bloodsound Evil Sect runs the second gate with one clean rule: survive. So when one terrified candidate tries to cut down an injured man, Byu catches the swing and watches the fear spread faster than any blade. Wait, killing is not the key here? Sayla sees the same thing through the blood on her face. The young candidates are not fighting to win anymore, because fear of death has ripped their reason away. Panic takes the courtyard. A wild fighter starts carving through the crowd, and the survivors finally notice him. One candidate blurts that something is wrong with that guy, while another screams that he will kill him first. Bad choice. The screaming candidate charges with a chain weapon. Sure, distance will keep him safe. The bloodstained fighter lets him come, kneeling near another body, as if the threat barely reaches him. But the next second, the chain strike crashes in, and the attacker is the one left shaken on the ground. Sayla watches from cover, tense enough to stop breathing for a second. She reaches for a bag beside a sheathed sword, because hiding will not carry her through a gate built to break cowards. What can she use before he sees her? The long-haired fighter rises over him and puts a huge hand on the sword hilt, so the chain attack has not kept him down. The smaller candidate still grins and dares him to try, even as his own chain hangs uselessly below. He is inviting the next strike from point-blank range. The fighter crushes the chain in his grip and answers with his sword. The mocking attacker gets cut down before his threat can finish, and the courtyard goes quiet around the body. Too late. Byu holds a masked figure back by the arm, preventing another reckless move, then smirks at the word helping. He is not rescuing anyone, he is deciding who gets to act, and that makes his interference a threat of its own. An elder spots a man carrying Seokjung, the black serpent blade, through the wreckage. He names the carrier as Neongung, a self-taught contender who found Mukun's secret manual and sword in the deep mountains. See, Neongung has power, but his foundation is rough, which brings us right back to the fight in front of Byu. Neongung is still counted as Mukhyan's only disciple for now, so even his flawed technique makes the other candidates hesitate. He lunges into Byu's range with that borrowed legacy on his back, and Byu lets the attack close before choosing his answer. Watch him. The bloodied observer smiles as the bodies settle and murmurs that this is exactly what he expected. Byu fixes his sharp eye on the last bloodstained survivor and says last one standing. The second gate has its answer, and the next danger is already waiting below the sect grounds. comes. At the second gate's killing field, Biyu and Sola stand among the dead. Sola's eyes shake as she looks back over the massacre, and the memory keeps dragging her to the bodies Nyung Eungang left behind. In Sola's memory, the masked woman stands in the rain with her blade drawn as an attacker reaches for her. Back in the trial, Biyu slashes through the blue blade barrage, and the masked woman is caught in it, bleeding as the attack proves it can tear through anyone who fails to evade. The attacker laughs that Biyu can only dodge awkwardly, and Biyu reads the truth underneath it. Why keep dodging? To avoid fatal blows, because even one clean hit from Nyunggang's style can end the fight. The hooded observer watches Biyu bleed and says those attacks only shaved off scraps of flesh. Another watcher clenches his fist because dodging is not enough anymore. Biyu needs a counter, and his wounds make that hard. Nyunggang expects Biyu to be trapped in defense, so he rushes in for the finish. But the next second, Biyu stops reading the blade and starts reading the killer behind it. Too late. Sola remembers kneeling over Nyunggang's corpses and finding the same answer again and again. His killing strikes aim for vital points, always the heart or the head. Biyu thinks, if murder drives the blade, where does it have to go? See, veteran masters can train a blade for years and still carry habits into a kill. That brings us right back to Biyu, because Sola's deduction gives him the lane he needs. Upper body, then what is left open? Sola's lesson lands clean. Even a child hitting with everything can knock an adult unconscious if the target opens up. Biyu drives his counter into the gap, and Nyunggang's defense breaks around the blow. The field goes quiet as the swordsman drops through the last exchange. Sola watches the aftermath with blood on the ground and bodies everywhere, and the trial's survivors now know Biyu did not just endure Nyunggang's killing style, he solved it. Nyunggang should stay down after Biyu's counter, and for one breath he does. But the next second, the bloodied killer tears himself back up screaming, not done yet. Biyu walks through the fallen bodies while the survivors stare at the mess around him. One voice starts asking if it is over, then another recognizes Biyu from the blazing sunset. Even the frightened ones now know his name. The trial count keeps dropping as more faces break under the pressure. The ones who came here to win now just want to be alive when the next number falls. On the ship after the trial, Biyu wakes among the survivors and the sea is already carrying them away. He sits up wrapped in bandages, feels the damage, and admits he lost a lot of blood. Biyu kneels beside another bandaged figure and notices the wounds have been treated well enough to make him question it. He wonders if the demonic cult brought in a renowned physician, which means their injuries were handled by someone far more skilled than expected. At the next trial site, Selah stands inside the dim wooden passage as the group is told they have reached the Hell Path, the trial ground after the first tests. The guide orders everyone to follow, so the wounded survivors move again before they can settle. The guide points them toward a carved rock shelter and calls it their lodging. Biyu checks the place and expected damp misery, but the cave is cleaner than he thought. Small mercy. A contestant snaps that he had his eye on that shelter first, and Biyu glances over without moving much. When the man folds and apologizes, this guy lets the argument die before it becomes another fight. As they walk on, Biyu reads the first checkpoint for what it was, a filter for people who could vanish without consequence. See, the trial did not need to beat everyone fairly, it only needed to remove the expendable ones. Which brings us right back to Selah. Biyu calls Selah over, and she points toward a bloodstained cave instead of following the crowd. Biyu grins and calls her a prodigy because she chooses the ugly path after actually checking it. The hooded examiner catches Selah inspecting the cave and tells her most people avoid it at first sight. Since she looked closely, he orders her to prepare right away. Her eyes snitch before her mouth opens. Inside the Hell Path, an instructor explains the new duties and lays out the rule. This place contains 10 martial halls. Selah frowns at the checkpoint's origin, while others rush toward Firestorm Sword Hall. The hall-most candidates chase for stronger martial arts. Biyu walks alone past the silent-robed figures and thinks, best techniques help, sure, but what good are they without a base? He stops by the rock formation, knowing he has no learned techniques yet, so our boy starts looking for the foundation first. Biyu narrows his eye and completes the answer. What he needs now is a foundation, not a flashy technique. He walks the dusk trail alone, and when a larger figure bends low before a smaller one, his search for that foundation has already pulled him into a new encounter. At the forest hut, Selah watches the place with a guarded look and asks if this broken-down shelter is really a martial hall. Biyu does not rush in either. Wait, the hall is the hut? Biyu kneels and checks the ground first, because the test is already waiting under their feet. The dirt answers with a hidden strike, and the kid snaps his head up as the force comes straight for him. The secret hall master of Langya Pavilion, the martial hall known for beast path techniques, rises from the ground and marks Biyu as the first one to notice the trap. The master watches from the dust, sharp-eyed and pleased, while Selah charges toward the same danger. Selah stops with a formal salute, but the secret hall master tests her anyway. He first gives a low, considering hum, then his eyes tighten when she stays upright through the pressure. That gets his attention. The test turns ugly fast, and Selah ends up face down in the mud. The secret hall master asks what she thinks she is doing, and the answer comes as a sudden kick from the ground. Bad answer. After that, the secret hall master ties his red sash and tells them to call him Master Sa. Biyu stares at him in silence, and this guy is already weighing whether the old hall hides something useful. Master Sa cuts off the speech before it becomes a lecture and starts the real lesson. Biyu expects another simple trap, but the next second, the training hits his senses hard enough to make his eye snap wide. Because Biyu and Selah pass the first bite of the test, Master Sa opens the beast path in front of them. Selah sees a beast spirit take shape, and the lesson is plain. Acquire the senses of a wild beast or get broken here. Now the training shifts into a harsher arena, with Biyu BU and Seola facing each other under Master Sa's Beast Path pressure. BU reads the danger in her stance and thinks, is she reacting to instinct now? No mercy. The beast pressure knocks trainees off balance one after another. Some stagger, some hit the ground, and the ones still breathing start trembling before the next command even comes. Master Sa drives the rule into them. Countless martial artists here are targeting each other to become a Samajinen. See, this place is not a normal school. Every hall is a filter, and every trainee is someone else's obstacle, which brings us right back to BU's problem. He needs power before the hall eats his new body alive. Later, the trial spills into the rain-soaked forest, and the blades finally come out for real. BU moves through the downpour with Seola close in the same deadly lesson, while one thrown blade drops behind them, and the next fight waits ahead. Now inside Langia Pavilion, BU keeps rebuilding the road back to the Heavenly Demon Throne, one stolen lesson at a time. The Langia Pavilion master spots the change first, and his confusion turns sharp as BU starts reading attacks that should still be above his body. Wait, he is adapting already? BU stops waiting for permission and pulls the fight toward him. He spreads his guard, raises his sword, and tells his opponent to dodge if he can. No room left. The other fighter expects BU to break under the rain and pressure. BU takes the hit, lunges back in, and forces the exchange into close range. But the next second, BU turns the opening against him and sends him flying through the storm. 3 days later, the Langia Pavilion master watches BU stand up again with bandaged hands. He says 3 days have passed and BU has kept taking every hit in silence. BU smirks through the pain and answers that he is right, then demands they continue. BU drops in from above, testing whether Seola can finally read a real blade. Seola braces herself and her fear tightens into focus. Can she see it now? Seola catches the path of BU's sword before it lands, and the fight finally stops being one-sided. The Langia Pavilion master stares at the turn and asks how anyone learns that in just 3 days. The shock spreads through the training ground before either of them lowers their blade. The effort finally bites back, and BU's body buckles hard enough to drag a grunt out of him. The Langia Pavilion master offers him celestial spring water, the treasure he has guarded his whole life, and says it is not a waste. He has found the greatest prodigy in the world. That pushes Sayal into the next test, and she swings with everything BU has beaten into her over these 3 days. The winged opponent tries to crush her head on, but Sayal holds the line and refuses to fold. The line Seola refused to lose finally catches up with her. Seola drives herself back into the duel and yells that she will land one more blow, even while her body is already shaking. She swings anyways. Her opponent expects the next push to break her guard. Seola grits her teeth and forces the sword forward, still refusing to stop, but the next second, the pressure turns on her instead. Seola catches the incoming blade before it reaches her, and the whole exchange snaps to a halt. The dragon roars with laughter over the fight, thrilled that she is still standing, not finished. With the spar settled at Langia Pavilion, BU steadies his breathing and says his sight has finally cleared again. The Langia Pavilion master does not waste the moment, because he now wants BU in the main sect instead of chasing the 10 demonic champion seat. BU looks past the offer and thinks, can Langia Pavilion alone prepare him for that? In his mind, the next enemy towers over him and Sulla, so he decides he cannot stop at one pavilion's martial arts. That decision drags Seola into the next lesson. Before she can even settle from the duel, the Langia Pavilion master tells her she will learn another martial art now, and Seola stiffens because she has barely started the Langia Pavilion basics. The Langia Pavilion master says the main sect does not pass its arts through books or spoken formulas. See, those techniques live through direct pressure and repeated use. That brings us right back to Seola, because he has already been teaching her without naming it. The Langia Pavilion master studies her blade and says she has already learned the main sect's beast path techniques. Seola remembers every sword attack he unleashed on her, and the lesson finally lands inside her hands. Seola thanks the elder, but he walks away and says there is no need, since he only followed the Demon Hall's order. BU hears that and thinks, what is Demon Hall setting up inside Hell Domain? The answer does not come yet. The Langia Pavilion master looks down at her and gives the lesson in one hard sentence. That's how the martial world is. He is telling Seola that this world runs on brutal rules, not comfort or easy answers. The Langia Pavilion master starts to speak about grace, but Seola cannot answer yet. She bows in the rain, hands to the ground, and tells him she is leaving now. From above, the Langia Pavilion master watches Seola walk away and mutters that a hidden dragon has appeared from nowhere. He says a bloodstorm will sweep through Hell Domain, the trial ground where the demon's successors are being shaped. Elsewhere in Hell Domain, BU's sharpened senses turn against him. Our boy thinks, why am I catching this much? Then the noise, movement, and presence around him wear him down so badly, he decides to seal those senses during normal times. Back with Seola, the story points her toward another old shadow. She hears of a grandmaster from 700 years ago, a peerless martial artist set to rival the heavenly demon himself. See, that name only comes up because Seola is leaving beast techniques behind for the next path, which brings us right back to her new training hall. Seola stops before a massive door and measures this place against Langia Pavilion, stunned that the training ground feels almost palace-like by comparison. Before she can settle in, a red-robed disciple turns toward her and a young man reacts in surprise, making her arrival impossible to ignore. Seola bows to Jingak, the beginner hall instructor who oversees new Huawu disciples, and asks to learn the sect's sword arts. Jingak does not welcome her warmly, because she has arrived half a month late. When Seola says she spent those 2 weeks learning at Langya Pavilion. Jingak pauses hard. She confirms it without dressing it up, and Jingak names himself as the man in charge of Beginner Hall. Jingak snaps at her delay, expecting a late disciple to shrink back. But the next second, Sayla plants herself and says she will learn the Huawu sword sect sword arts anyway. No retreat. Jingak tests that stubbornness with a harsh sword display, and Sayla is thrown into the lesson before she even has footing. Bu is not there to catch this one, but if he were, he would think, wait, did she come here without a sword foundation at all? Jingak finally hears the problem and nearly chokes on it. Sola admits she has never studied swordsmanship even once, so he asks if she truly has zero sword training. Sola answers that's right. Jingak checks the records again because Ciala being listed as a scholar fits the mess in front of him. The old notes say her reflexes and judgment already showed up in the second hall, even when she chose that cave to live in. Those records do not sound gentle either. They point back to a bloody test, a cave marked by a trail, and a disciple who starts from nothing but still survives the ugly parts. Bu catches the shape of it and grins through the sweat. He thinks, wait, if she really began with no sword base, what happens once Jingak teaches her properly? Jingak does not hand her a full lecture first. He points her to the Huawu manual on the door and tells Sayla to read it, since letters are still her ground. Sayla copies the stance right away, and Jingak freezes mid-thought. The beginner hall instructor watches her catch the lesson from one explanation and starts smiling like he just found trouble worth keeping. Then Jingak pushes the lesson into her body, forcing Sayla close to the sword before she can hide behind reading. She grabs, adjusts, and fights for the grip until the movement stops being copied and starts becoming hers. Jingak expects a raw scholar to break down once the blade actually moves, but the next second, Sayla drives through the form, and the pressure around her turns sharp enough to make him reassess her on the spot. Jingak gives the real order now. Imagine an opponent and execute the Huawu 13 forms. Bu hears that and thinks, an opponent? Is she about to swing at a memory instead of a person? Sayla draws her sword even though no clear opponent stands in front of her, then lunges with total focus. As she begins the first form, return the wind to its source. A shadowed swordsman with glowing eyes appears in her path, turning the drill into a direct clash. Jingak jolts at the result. The Huawu sword sect is known for righteousness within the demonic road, a technique that walks a hard line between clean form and killing intent, which brings us right back to Sola twisting it on her first try. She keeps going before Jingak can stop her. The second strike rolls into the third form, and Seela names Drifting Cloud Veil of Mist as her blade drops through the lesson. Jingak stares with his mouth open, because that is not how a beginner should move. No way. Bu feels the adapted form bite wrong through the flow of the technique. He thinks, why does a Huawu form feel like it is tearing itself open? The watching disciple gasps first, unable to match scholar records with that killing edge. Jingak, the man judging beginner hall, goes quiet because Seela is not just learning the form, she is changing its path. Bu lies on the ground, staring upward as the anomaly sinks in. Something is off, and that matters, because the technique he thought he understood is now behaving outside his read. Sola keeps reading the Huawu 13 forms, but her blade refuses to stay polite. Bu watches the two forces in her sword start to fuse and thinks, why would she merge them that far? Bu's eye sharpens as the form twists past the manual. He wants the power, sure, but even he would not join the flows that completely. As the blades cross in the dark, Sayla's red eyes fix on the vow behind the strike. The murderer of their grandfather will be found and faced. The falling body turns the exchange from sword practice into a revenge oath with real blood behind it. Sayla drives into the 7 sequence, and the Huawu form stops looking like a beginner's lesson. See, Huawu sword sect is known for righteousness within the demonic road, so when Sayla bends that art into something sharper, Bu thinks, what secret is hiding in her sword? A masked figure's blade cuts through the frame in a burst of blood, making the adapted form look openly lethal now. Whatever this sword path is, it is no longer just technique. It is an attack meant to maim or kill. The strike tears through the imagined opponent, and the watching disciple can no longer match Sayla to her scholar records. Jingak, the instructor judging beginner hall, goes quiet because she copies too fast and changes too much. The opponent should regain distance here, because Sayla just forced too much power through an unfinished base, but the next second he panics that she is faster than anyone he has faced. Sayla lunges in low and crashes into the next sword clash before the exchange can breathe. Her blade keeps driving forward, so the opponent has to answer the attack instead of resetting. Her opponent strains under the next exchange and chokes out a pained grunt. Bu keeps watching, because the kid is not just performing Huawu swordsmanship now. Salah empties the rest of the forms all at once, turning the test into a full assault. Jingak sees enough in that rush to stop treating her like a normal beginner hall disciple. The impact throws the opponent back, and the final strike locks him down before he can answer. Sayla's sword has carried her straight to the edge of junior hall, but Bu is still staring at the distortion inside the art. Bu watches Sayla's borrowed Huawu forms tear through the test opponent, and his first thought is not relief. He thinks, wait, why is her sword twisting the form that far? Sayla keeps forcing the technique forward, but the strain finally catches up to her grip. The test opponent breaks first and admits, I was defeated. Jingak stops the match there and tells Sayla she passed. Her grasp of the Huawu 13 forms holds up in real combat, so beginner hall can no longer keep her. Jingak sends her onto junior hall, then warns BU that her sword carries a heavy killing intent. BU bows, but his mind stays on one question. What secret is she carrying inside that sword? Inside Junior Hall, Seila pushes through the doors expecting instruction, not a welcome party. Chunung-wang, the Hua-Wu Sword Sec's Junior Hall instructor, smirks and tells the newcomer the seats are already full. BU and Jingak enter the hall behind her, and the room goes quiet. BU remembers spending his first 15 days in Langya Pavilion, the Hell Domain Hall that teaches Beast Path techniques, before being pushed into this sword class. Chunung-wang lets BU sit only because he cleared Beginner Hall. Then he warns the class that sloppy sword work damages the user's own body first. To prove it, Chunung-wang makes the lesson public and has Sword Force rip across the training floor. See, Hua-Wu Sword Sect teaches the Hua-Wu 13 forms, but its deeper claim is righteousness within the demonic road. That brings us right back to BU, who is watching for every crack in the lesson. Chunung-wang treats swordsmanship as only one step in a larger path, so he asks for a demonstration target. A grinning disciple points straight at BU and nominates him. Bold choice. Chunung-wang accepts the nomination, because measuring your own skill is part of being a martial artist. The room expects the loud disciple to expose BU as all nerve and no sword. But the next second, the first exchange caves in that plan. The nominated disciple is knocked backward before the lesson even has time to settle. Inside the intermediate hall, the spar turns ugly fast. A masked attacker crowds BU with a clawed weapon, so BU forces his sword up and meets the strike head on. Steel bites back. Seila takes her turn with a training partner holding a wooden staff. She kicks into the staff, steals the line of attack, then hammers the partner hard enough to throw him off balance. Seila does more than land a flashy kick. She drives into the partner's wooden staff, takes hold of it herself, and turns his own guard into the weapon that knocks his balance away. BU strains against the next blade and feels the pressure run badly through his fingers. He thinks, is this body still dragging behind me? The masked enemies press in, and he grits out that this pace will get him cut down. The room expects BU to keep dodging until his weaker body gives out. The attacker leans harder. Sure, the next push will finish him, but the next second, BU raises his fist and drives his killing intent into the blood-breaking strike. See, blood-breaking strike comes from the Asura Sword Sect, a killing move built to end a duel fast. The hall recognizes the danger only after BU uses it under pressure, which brings us right back to Seola. She answers with her own sword and cuts through the opening before the partner can reset. Her opponent sees the blade dropping and snaps at her for dodging too well. He tries to reclaim the duel with Bloodwind annihilates the moon, and the strike blows the floor open around them. The watching disciples rush forward in alarm. Seo Jinna, one of the 5-peak swords, stares at the exchange and reassesses the girl he thought he understood. The room now has two names to whisper, BU and Sola. BU moves before the shock settles. He reads the next attack and thinks, wait, that angle is from the Hua-Wu 13 forms? Then our boy steps through it and turns the lesson back on the attacker. The attacker thinks he has slipped behind BU. Too late. BU walks past as the delayed cut lands, and Seila looks back with her sword already under control. The onlookers stare down at the fallen man, and one of them can barely finish, saying he has been hit. Jingak, the instructor tied to the beginner hall, has to face the gouged floor and the body at his feet. BU stands calm with his sword sheaths in hand, and the intermediate hall has no easy excuse left. The fallen fighter hits the floor with blood at his mouth, and the watching crowd says Seola struck the Danjung vital point dead on. Seola reads the hit and wonders if he came from Langya Pavilion, because that kind of point work is supposed to be basic there. Too clean. Jingak snaps at the room to stop making excuses, because the intermediate hall is already losing face. He reminds them this martial hall is not a true sect hall, so borrowed pride will not save anyone here. Blades clash while thrown daggers cut through the rush, and the fight turns dangerous fast. One woman ends up on the floor gasping. A man lies bleeding beside a blood-streaked blade, and a smirking man clamps onto the woman's arm, turning the exchange from a clean contest into forced control. Jinga cuts the attempt short and throws the loser out with one cold order. The hall goes quiet as he walks off, because the easy explanation for Sola is gone. Jingak turns back to Seila and presses her on what she actually wants. Seila touches her chest and says if staying here lets her climb higher, she will stay. When he asks why she would choose that, she gives him silence instead of a clean answer. Jingak lists what Sola has already done. She mastered the beast sword and broke the chaotic sword style of the Sora sword sect. When the answer still comes back as yes, he can only stare and let out a strained laugh, because achievements like that are too serious to dismiss. A robed instructor warns Seola that if he finds even a trace of any sword style outside the Hwal 13 forms, he will take her head on the spot. She freezes under it because her progress now carries a blade over her neck. Back in the training yard, Jingak watches BU spar and thinks, wait, did this guy really start from nothing? He has taught the kid for 4 days and checked him from every angle, but BU keeps answering like a trained swordsman. See, demonic martial arts need killing intent, and Jingak recognizes that same edge in BU's movement, which brings us right back to the spar. BU takes the pressure head on, blood on his cheek, and his next attack forces Jingak to stop doubting the basics. BU thinks, then why does this body already know where to cut? The watching instructor trails off, because the answer sitting in BU's sword is not beginner talent. BU's hand drips blood beside the blade as Jingak's old lesson lands in his head. Demonic martial arts demand killing intent. A memory answers him with Jingak ruffling BU's hair, then the past opens into bodies scattered among bare trees. Even Even now, back in the training grounds, BU has gained proof that his blade still remembers the throne, but the body carrying it is still weak. So the lesson turns ugly because the instructor's killing sword has its own past. The truth lands plainly. Martial arts have fallen to a lower level, and the martial world is now full of men talking about what their pasts used to be. One man bows in shadow while another looks up startled. So the lesson becomes bigger than one exchange. It is proof of an entire world in decline. The instructor corners Sela at first, asking her name before she can hide behind silence. When she answers, he flatly tells her she has a big problem, and Sela stiffens because he is not talking about one bad swing. He tests her on the spot, then points her toward the gap she keeps pretending is small. Her rival's trained since childhood, so raw nerve will not carry her through the next hall. To close that gap, the instructor offers Sela his own Jonro Musan. He makes it clear this is the technique he created himself, and the surging golden energy around him turns the offer into a serious new training path. The lesson turns physical as fists collide, power flares, and an inscribed manual is held up before the onlookers. This is not just advice anymore. The technique is being put in front of them as something real to study and face. Nearby, BU lowers his head and studies the same lesson from a different angle. If sword styles keep falling, what part of the old path is still worth stealing back? The instructor's lesson cuts deeper when Seola remembers the dirty work nobody respects. He says cleaning corpses earns ridicule, but killing a man with a sword brings awe, and Seola has to sit with that rotten rule. Sola expects the lesson to stay in words, with the bamboo branch only marking distance. But the next second, the instructor severs it right beside her, and she freezes at how close the strike comes. The instructor holds the cut branch in front of Sela, saying nothing because the warning is already clear. Across from him, BU reaches forward and answers the no-sword lesson his own way. You will use the opponent's blade. BU grips the instructor's blade bare-handed, answering the no-sword lesson with the most direct theft possible. The instructor expects the kid to flinch from steel, but the next second, BU yanks the whole exchange onto his own terms. BU stares at the blade and thinks, wait, he let me take it? The instructor lunges anyway, so our boy snaps back before the lesson turns into a wound. The instructor watches BU's reaction and smiles, because the boy did not just survive the trick. CLA catches it too, startled by how fast the lesson moved from theory to danger. BU plants his foot through the dust, already reading the next move. What is this old man testing now? The instructor sees BU's instincts rise and mutters that even a wolf cub is still a wolf. Then he reaches forward with that same pleased look, already waiting for the next bite. The lesson ends, but the aftermath is not a clean dismissal. A small huddled figure stays alone on the tree path, so the quiet afterclass lands like a consequence, not a break. Back in the woods, BU hears footsteps and stops cold. He counts the approach before they show themselves. 5. Seo Jinha moves first, dropping one attacker before the group can surround BU. One voice cracks on his name, and another grabs his weapon like that will help. The remaining attacker swings, trying to turn numbers back into courage. Seo Jinha shuts him down and stands there calm enough to make everyone else breathe smaller. The two survivors panic and ask why Seo Jinha is attacking them. Seo Jinha tells them to get lost, then dismisses them as small fry. That one stings with interest. The red-haired swordswoman raises her blade and demands, which side are you on? Her weapon turns the question into a threat, because the answer decides whether the person in front of her is treated as an ally or an enemy. See, the Fire Rain Sword students have only learned the first form, Hoyeon Juhen, so far. The instructor says mastery starts only when each student makes the form his own, which brings us right back to BU being watched like a possible spy. Seo Jinha's spy question hangs over BU, and Jingak calls his name before the room can breathe. Jingak orders him to perform Hoyeon Juhen, so BU raises his hand and thinks, why call him now? BU draws his sword into a sudden stance, and a young woman's eyes go wide because the test has turned dangerous. He brings the glowing blade down toward her, forcing her to intercept or dodge instead of just watch a routine form. BU turns the form into his own strike instead of copying the lesson. The motion ends with him alone on the training floor, sword marks carved around him. Jingak studies the marks and only lets out a low hum. The watching disciples go quiet first. Then Jingak sends BU back to his spot, and Seo Jinha has to keep staring with no clean answer yet. The next student steps in, and the female disciple's sword bends under the force before she drops a hand to the wooden floor. With confession hanging over the floor, the watching pair can only look aside seriously as the practice turns too heavy to soften. Steel comes out again, and BU catches the threat before the lesson can stay neat. He thinks, wait, why is this not Hyeon Juhyun? Then he answers the attacker with a counter instead of the assigned form. Seo Jinha reads that counter as guilt and presses BU harder. BU cuts through the pressure, but Seo Jinha snaps back, shouting, don't play dumb. See, the trial's entry rules were loose enough for a spy to slip in. So Jinha sees the whole setup as bait, which brings us right back to BU wondering who the trap is really for. Outside in the forest trial ground, the hidden danger shows itself. A wolf-like beast attacks through the flames, but the masked figure strikes it hard enough to send it flying back bleeding. Elsewhere in the same forest, Seola faces a huge shadow alone. She has poured everything into Langya Pavilion's Beast Path arts and the Fire Rain sword training, so she meets the enemy head-on and drives her blade through the opening. Above the forest training ground, the next trial is about to begin. A massive winged creature sweeps over the pavilion, and its shadow crossing the roof means the threat is now overhead. Inside the study hall, the elder instructor steadies his hand beside a dropped brush and keeps the lesson going. He tells the disciples that martial principles may feel tedious, but even real masters still study them before battle. Outside the hall now, the gong tears through the night, and the trainees snap out of their training haze. maze. One disciple panics over the sound, but the elder instructor only raises his hand and says the time has come. At the trial ground, rain lashes jagged rocks under a dark red sky, and even the ground looks cracked and hostile. There is no shelter here. Whatever comes next begins in open, broken terrain. Ciola remembers the life or death fight she already survived and realizes that was counted as the second trial. She does not know how the others cleared theirs, but the elder instructor answers the question for everyone. He orders them to kill each other. The candidates freeze in their rows, and BU watches from among them with one sharp thought. Third trial already? The elder instructor allows hiding, running, or fighting, but the safe area will keep shrinking, so waiting only makes the slaughter closer. Then the killing ghosts step into view, and even the farthest candidates feel their murderous pressure. BU narrows his eye and thinks, are they hurting us? The elder instructor makes it worse by saying anyone caught by them dies. A challenger laughs and reaches toward the nearest candidate. Sure, anyone aiming for the 10 should survive this much. The trainees expect the ghost to be the only threat, but the next second, candidates start cutting at each other too, and BU knows he has already drawn too many eyes. Inside the third trial, BU watches the candidates tighten their grips instead of running. Sola drops into the chaos, remembering something from before, and our boy reads the whole field before anyone gets close. Bug and Sayla move through the first rush while blades come from every side. The nearest attackers expect panic, but the next second, the two slip past the trap and leave the fight behind. Deeper in the trial forest, an injured candidate bursts out begging for help. He claims 3 bastards are chasing him down, and he swears he will repay whoever saves him. BU studies the blood and thinks, is that fear real or bait? The wounds are real, so the bait works for half a breath before 3 armed pursuers charge in together. The wounded candidate plays helpless, clutching a leaf like he has nothing left. Farther out, the pursuers lose the trail, and one of them snarls that he will kill the bastard himself. Too loud. The chase turns physical at once. A burst of force sends someone collapsing near the house. Then a black-robed figure reaches for the torn cloth or pit in the ground, turning the hunt from shouting into evidence they can act on. The pounding feet give BU everything he needs. He thinks, wait, they are tracking vibrations? See, the beast path arts turn movement through the ground into a map, which brings us right back to BU finding the hunters first. Nearby, Sayla closes her eyes and steadies herself under that same pressure. BU keeps his sword sheathed, but the quiet bothers him because something still does not add up. Then his eye snaps open as he realizes the situation is not finished yet. The smiling candidate finally drops the helpless act. He admits he fled into the forest when the third trial began, then asks Ciela to travel with him because she hit him earlier. Ciela accepts for now, and they walk together under the trees. The candidate smiles up ahead like his little plan is already clean. He points Ciela toward trouble in the forest where another man vows to avenge his fallen brothers. Then BU reaches the fallen man first, standing over him as the masked figure names this revenge. The gaunt elder watches from the dark, which means the ambush now has another witness, and the confrontation is not over yet. In the forest, the young disciple looks up and freezes when BU steps into his path. Ciela stays low in the bushes, watching BU move ahead while the hidden attackers wait for their opening. The masked attackers rush in first, trying to turn the revenge chaos into a clean kill. BU and Sayla answer together, and the first exchange turns bloody fast. One attacker drops, and Sayla's grip tightens as blood sprays across her sword. The young disciple recoils at the mess and mutters that the blood is too much. More masked attackers stand over the fallen bodies, so BU rises in front of them with his sword ready. He thinks, where's the real strike coming from? One attacker expects BU to chase the obvious target, but the next second, Sayla cuts through the sideline and forces the attackers to face her instead. Sayla keeps pressing even when the next masked attacker meets her blade head-on. She drives him back, then stands over the broken line with both weapons in hand. A blood-streaked blade hangs near a face, and a shadowed figure with glowing white eyes stands amid the slash marks. The aftermath makes the exchange clear. The last strike has drawn blood, and anyone still within reach is in immediate danger. The revenge seeker finally loses himself in the blood around him. He laughs until his voice cracks, then whispers, "My revenge, done." BU kneels near the fallen body, while the young disciple watches from behind him, shaken but impressed. He calls BU's skill incredible, but the praise turns dangerous as an unseen attacker drives a sharp weapon straight at the youth's head. The fight erupts into a blur of steel as blades slam together and sparks fly. The attacker keeps pouring on rapid strikes, so every clash matters because one missed block could end the exchange immediately. The attacker lunges again, desperate to finish the trick before BU reads it fully. BU thinks, how many weapons did he hide on himself? Then BU's answer hits the attacker cold. He has been watching every fake move from the start. The ambusher's confidence breaks into one stunned thought, that can't be. The ambusher grins before the hidden weapons burst out again, trying to bury BU before he can answer. BU lunges through the attack and thinks, was that grin supposed to scare him? The ambusher coughs blood, and BU cuts the trick apart with one cold read. Hidden weapons stop working once the hiding is gone. Sayla is already behind the bloodied fighter, standing calm while he freezes with blood across his face. By the time he turns wide-eyed, the damage is done, and his chance to answer her is gone. Sayla sheathes her blade over the fallen body, and the dead around her settle the argument for everyone watching. The young disciple's earlier praise still hangs in the air, while the attacker gets the final answer face down in the dirt. Sayla's hands do not shake. In the rainy forest, Sayla crouches beside another slain body as the trial stops looking like a test and starts looking like a hunt. BU moves in through the masked attackers, reading the next ambush instead of chasing noise. He thinks, how many of them are waiting underground this time? Ciela hits the ground with blood across her face, but her faint smile gives away the answer before anyone celebrates. The next attacker expects a helpless target, but the next second, Ciela rises with her sword drawn, and the trap closes around him instead. Deeper in the forest, eyes glare from the dark while bodies pile up between the trees. See, Hell Domain is built from 10 martial halls, and the higher the survivors climb, the less mercy the trial leaves them. Which brings us right back to BU, because surviving now takes planning, not pride. The masked attackers press harder, throwing bodies aside and cutting through the clearing to break the scattered survivors. BU sees their weapons favor open space, so he starts dragging the fight into tighter ground. Our boy needs a plan fast. Above the forest, bright signals streak down, and the fight spreads beyond one clearing. On the mountain peak, a fur-clad elder demands the situation report, then snaps when he hears only 41 remain after 3 days. His patience ends there. The elder grins and orders the next move. Release the assassins of the deadly secret into Firestorm Sword Hall. A folded order changes hands, and the raid turns organized. Now the trial has hunters with permission. Back in the forest, BU's new enemy lunges first, taunting him as the spear closes in. The kid does not answer yet. He watches the point come straight for him. BU catches the incoming weapon point with his bare hand, and the attacker freezes on the spot. Too late. Our boy twists into the gap, hammers the nearby fighter's back, and Ciela reads the problem fast. Open ground favors their long weapons, so staying there is asking to get surrounded. Elsewhere inside the command room, a blood-spattered commander checks the count and stops waiting. He orders the assassins of the deadly secret released into Firestorm Sword Hall, so the trial stops being survival and turns into a hunt with orders. Inside Firestorm Sword Hall, blood already stains the floor before the next squad even moves. 3 black-clad disciples tighten around their weapons, and the sect gate under the sunset feels less like shelter now and more like a trap. Deeper in the hall, the White Horse squad searches room by room, sure their target is cornered. One of them grins and says nobody escapes them, while BU thinks, is he really checking the room before his own back? The White Horse fighter expects a clean rush, and his ally even shouts a warning from behind. But the next second, BU turns first, drives a counter into the ambush, and the squad loses the neat formation it was counting on. The corridor fight breaks open as the White Horse squad tries to pin BU between blades and pressure. A larger fighter snarls through the pain, but this guy keeps moving just outside their rhythm, and the squad starts swinging at panic instead of a plan. Salah takes the tight hallway for herself, because the long weapons lose bite when they cannot spread out. She cuts upward, spots the cramped layout, and charges anyway, thinking one simple thing: if she takes them one by one, she can win. That choice pays off fast. Saola runs the corridor line, drops enemies one at a time, and the remaining fighters rush together, because waiting now only gives her another clean target. Their whip finally catches near the wall, and for one breath they think the hallway belongs to them again. BU deflects it with a smirk. The weapon bites the wall instead, and the squad shouts that this is their chance as they surge in. In the Hell Domain trial, BU has already stolen time, space, and a few useful techniques, so this raid turns into the next step back toward the Heavenly Demon Sea. The dark hall erupts with screams, and one half-awake disciple jerks up, barely managing a confused huh? The assassins of the deadly secret pour pressure into Firestorm Sword Hall, and one victim cracks under it. Torn robes, blood, and raw panic spread through the room before the disciples even understand where the attack comes from. BU moves first. Our boy cuts through the ambush line, then walks past the bodies so calmly that the surviving disciples can only shout warnings after the fact. Sol-Ah, still carving her way through the cramped hall, peeks from the railing and catches BU's sword work. The assassins notice it too, and one bloodied fighter asks if that earlier move was the fiery rain sword. The wounded fighter tries to make the question into a threat, laughing as he asks the name of someone about to die. BU does not give him one, because the bodies on the floor already answer enough. Sella hits the ground with her sword knocked away, and the words profound earth and profound heaven drag her focus off the fight. The attacker sees her drift and snaps that thinking in the middle of combat is a great way to lose a head. He swings in heavy, sure the wide weapon will crush her before she resets. But Sela forces herself back into the fight and answers with a rising cut that breaks his rhythm. BU reads the same problem from the other end of the hall and thinks, can that whip really breathe in this space? He rushes low anyway, because a confined room stops long weapons from spreading their reach. The White Horse Squad leader steps in without fear, disappointed that BU has not broken yet. Then he hammers the floor and drives the fight open again, forcing BU to defend instead of chase. The next attack crashes in as a slashing burst of energy, then the fighter lunges through the vortex with another blow ready. The streaking cuts keep closing the distance, so the defender has no room to reset or turn defense into a counter. The White Horse Whip wraps BU in a closing barrage, and the squad leader laughs that it will soon take his life. But the next second, BU braces inside the storm instead of running. The whip closes in. BU holds his ground inside the White Horse Whip and runs the answer through his head. Profound earth and profound heaven can block it, but they cannot break it, so he thinks, what do I need right now? The squad leader sees BU move and snaps into the kill. Sure, the whip has him boxed in, but the next second, BU flips out of the closing line and forces the squad leader to chase instead. BU stops defending and answers with raw force, blasting the squad leader out of his own trap. The man goes flying, and the White Horse Whip loses its grip. Blood runs down BU's face, but his eye stays locked on the fallen squad leader. Our boy checks the mess in front of him and thinks, did I waste too much time already? The squad leader is down on the blood-splattered floor, and BU stands over him with his sword still ready. He looks at the blood on his hand, decides the result is useful enough, and admits he has already stayed too long. Later in a quiet hallway, Bor appears in a blank white mask and black robe, hiding his face for the next lesson. Sayla rushes him from behind with her sword drawn, but he cuts her timing before her attack can settle. Too late. The training turns brutal when a serpent surges into Sayla's path and forces her to fight through fear instead of form. Sayla charges anyway, blood on her face, because backing off only gives Biyu more room to punish her. Sayla survives the rush, but she ends up crouched under Biyu's pressure with her sword barely between them. He watches from the distance like a hunter waiting for the wrong twitch. Biyu's blade pins the space in front of Sayla's face, and she freezes with blood running down her cheek. She thinks that if she moves even a little, he will strike that spot first. Biyu raises one finger and turns the fight into a lesson Sayla cannot ignore. He says carnivores are faster, but herbivores still escape, and Sayla answers that they survive by moving in zigzags. Biyu keeps Sayla locked in that frozen space and finishes the lesson. He says fast hunters still miss zigzag prey, so Sayla asks the real question. How does a predator handle it? Biyu answers that the predator matches the prey's movement, and Sayla takes that into her bones. She shifts wide, screams through the fear, and tries to move before his blade owns the path. Sayla expects the change to save her, but the next second, Biyu reads the turn first and throws her clean off her feet. Too late. The lesson snaps into a harsher memory, where Biyu cuts through armed men in a hall and asks himself, why is a killing demon here? He grips his sword because running is not why he came. Biyu drives a low slash through the dust and sends the masked enemy reeling, but the exchange turns on him immediately. Blood spatters his face, and his wide-eyed shock says he has been caught too late. Biyu staggers with blood on his face and curses that he is too late. The masked enemy holds the space, and Biyu now knows one wrong twitch gets punished first. Back in Sayla's lesson, she charges again because standing still only feeds Biyu's timing. The memory of the beast who killed her grandfather burns through her, and she admits that killer must have had terrifying martial skill too. In the forest memory, a hooded challenger finds Biyu resting on a rock and demands his name. Biyu's alarm flashes for one breath, then he answers with steel and tells him, you wasted my time. Biyu stops waiting and drives the fight toward an ending. The hooded challenger tries to cut him down first, but our boy slips the killing line by a hair and keeps moving. Biyu steadies in the rain, blade ready, and the watching fighter finally gives him credit. He says Biyu used beast-like instinct to predict the path, and that praise lands right as the fight changes shape. Biyu swings upward with a confident grin as the narration marks him as becoming one of the 10 candidates. A masked figure reaches down, then Biyu lunges forward with glowing eyes and a shout, turning that rise in status into immediate pressure. The burst settles with Biyu still standing, and an unseen watcher falters over the title Seed of the Demonic Sect. That question hangs in the air while Biyu's path to the 10 candidates stays open. That warning about predicting the killing line finally catches up to Sayla. Biyu faces the gathered candidates and says not everyone came here dreaming of the 10 demon successor seat. He is calling out the ones who only came to survive. Sayla freezes, sweating as she recognizes the pressure in the violent clash. Biyu and the brown-haired swordsman trade sword blows in mid-air with energy bursting around them, turning that feeling into immediate danger. Years earlier, Bo Jianyang, the grandfather who raised them, studies a battered body on a stone slab while young Sayla watches in distress. He names the Oho Danmon blade and says every weapon hit pours force straight into the body. Sayla remembers that fear now because the masked swordsman fights the same way. Biyu catches the flow mid-fight and snaps alert. Absorption technique? See, that skill drags inner force inward like a vortex, and it can twist an opponent's weapon path. Used well, it breaks form first, then eats the panic, which brings us right back to Biyu's blade getting pulled offline. The masked swordsman invokes the Peng clan of Hebei and commits to the draw-in. Biyu expects the pull to open a gap, so he lets his sword glide with it. But the next second, the masked swordsman turns that same pull into a trap. The light-haired swordsman blurts, "What?" as the masked figure slips away and sends him flying through a slashing arc. The exchange flips the advantage on the spot. His attack fails, and now he is airborne, exposed and losing control of the fight. The counter rakes past Biyu's face, so our boy bites down and keeps his body from folding. What is he changing at the last second? The masked swordsman cries out as Biyu's answer lands first. Back in Sayla's clearing, she grips her sword and tries to copy the timing instead of the shape. She steps in only when the enemy's strike commits, and her face lights up when the trick finally takes. She thinks it plainly, it works. Sayla lunges in with both hands and lands the strike, but the body in front of her barely gives. Biyu studies the result and reads the cost fast. A long-trained body can survive a weak version of the technique. Sayla narrows her eyes and goes back to the manual. The late strike technique only matters at the split second of contact, so copying the swing is useless. She needs the moment. She raises the sheath sword and commits again. The onlooker yells as Sayla steps into the strike instead of backing away, and her grip tightens until the blade has nowhere to wander. No retreat. Sayla launches herself into the final line of attack. Biyu stands ready inside the pressure and watches her timing, asking one quiet question in his head. Will she read the intent before before the blade arrives. The attack path tears open, and Sayla chooses the ugly answer over the pretty form. She drives in with a dagger, keeps her eyes on BU, and meets the masked man mid-strike. Now she is hunting the timing back. The swordsman thinks Sayla's answer is already spent, so he rushes her and mocks the pathetic trick. Sayla stays quiet and watches the instant before contact, but the next second, she steps into his technique instead of away from it. The swordsman lunges straight at Saya, but she does not flinch or chase the shape of his swing. She holds her ground until the clash point, and his shocked recoil shows the exchange has turned against him. Across the rocky ravine, BU takes the next exchange himself, and the enemy finally feels the gap in timing. The strike lands where he cannot guard, and our boy forces him down before the man can reset. Too late, the wounded swordsman drops low with his hand still glued to the hilt, refusing to let the lesson end clean. Sayla stands over the broken line of attack with blood on her face, and the crouched witness can only admit he never imagined anyone could interpret Mystic Profound Sword like that. The bloodied swordsman grips his ornate blade and laughs through the wound, impressed against his will. He tells BU that even among those who came to welcome him, finding someone like this is interesting. BU thinks, how many came here waiting for me? The man kneels with his blood-covered sword raised, but BU is already walking away from the failed welcome. The wound opens deeper, and the swordsman collapses at BU's feet. Done. BU names the fallen fighter as Peng Ak of Hebei Peng family, a swordsman bold enough to test the demon sword. Peng Ak still stands for one breath longer, but BU's judgment is cold and simple. BU says, you underestimated the demon sword. Peng Ak has nothing left to answer with, so BU ends it. BU says farewell. The blade falls, and Peng Ak's welcome turns into a body on the ground. Nearby, another wounded fighter braces against a tree while a huge dark-clad attacker closes in. The fighter bares his teeth, but armed men are already moving in from every side. No room left. The lone defender plants his blade by the tree and faces the group anyway while rain cuts through the clearing. One masked attacker smiles before the rush, already sure the injured target cannot hold. Then the group charges downhill toward BU. The lead masked attacker lunges first, smirking as his companion follows his line. BU catches the strike on his blade, but his bleeding arm buckles under the weight and he grunts through the block. The next fight starts with BU already hurt. BU is hurt, surrounded, and still choosing the fight. The masked swordsmen rush him together, sure his trained body only softens the hits for a little while. But the next second, BU reads the late strike trick at contact and turns their own timing against them. A purple-haired fighter cuts through the black-clad attackers, sending bodies crashing down around the bloodied wreckage. When he is left standing among the fallen, another armed figure approaches from the rocks. The fight has shifted from a group assault to a one-on-one confrontation. The surviving swordsman sees BU standing with a bloodied blade and finally understands the demon sword was never his to test. His breath catches first, then his nerve goes. Pinned and bleeding, the swordsman tries to bargain his way out. He offers BU a deal, but BU only stares at him and asks, why should I? That answer lands colder than the blade. Nearby in the trial grounds, Sayla faces the same dirty rule from another angle. Someone reads her as prideful and independent, so he offers a temporary truce. Fight side by side, beat the rest, and do not betray each other until they escape. Sayla reels with tears in her eyes, but she stays on her feet with the bound gourd in hand. Then she whips into motion, and the jagged white slash shows she is answering the threat with an attack instead of surrendering. Back with BU, a shout cuts through the standoff as armed survivors close in. The grinning man and the blade holders are already moving, so BU is no longer dealing with one bargain. More enemies are entering the fight. A smirking swordsman tries to force the waiting fighters into making the first mistake. He shouts that they are all just waiting to see who strikes first, and BU narrows his eyes at the name being thrown around. Bu Jianyang, the one who mastered Beast Dao of Langya Pavilion. See, Langya Pavilion is one of the Hell Domain martial halls, and its Beast Path techniques are exactly the kind of power BU is hunting. The onlookers realize the two fighters were not making random groups at all. BU and Seo Jinha, the five-peak swordsmen, have joined forces back to back, and every survivor now has to choose who they fear more. One fighter reaches for Young Shuisan, the Hellblood sex poison, and the whole standoff changes fast. Another man spots it and yells that name in panic, while BU watches the hand, not the shouting. Poison first. BU thinks, is that their hidden card? The trail points to a cave with a narrow entrance and one long passage inside. So this guy starts moving before the survivors can seal him in there. The poison play leaves a body flat on the ground, and BU tears through the rocky path to reach the cave route. Seola turns at the crash, caught between relief and alarm, when BU arrives masked and already cut up. BU is not alone on that route. Another masked figure stands near him, his robe ripped open across the scarred back, and BU thinks, how many people already know this secret path? Inside the restricted zone now, the danger gets worse. The fighters realize soul fiends are roaming here, and Sayla snaps that if they do not cross the line, they might still stay alive. But staying still is no answer, so Sayla grips her sword and chooses the only clean option left. She would rather fight forward than wait for the soul fiends to decide for her. BU steps in beside Sayla, and the two raise their blades back to back. Around them, masked attackers gather through the mist, and their leader sneers at the annoying pests blocking the way. The masked attackers expect Sayla to crack first, because she is pinned in front and bodies are already dropping behind her. But the next second, BU drops into the fight and forces the strike away from her. The line holds. This is the final battle to decide the 10 demon champions, so nobody here gets to hide behind numbers. The masked group rushes Seola together, and BU cuts into their timing before the charge can swallow her. BU catches a killing blow overhead and drives it back with his own sword. The attackers press in, so our boy answers with one huge cut that rips their formation apart and leaves blood across the mountain road. The surviving fighters scatter into smaller duels, and the masked side loses its clean advantage. Seola and BU keep fighting from the center, breathing hard but still standing. By the end of the exchange, fallen bodies mark the road from above, and the battle is still not fully over. BU has found more than a trial here. Hidden poison, restricted soul fiends, and masked killers, all moving through the same path. On the blood-soaked road, Seola's strength finally starts to give. She grips her sword, feels the next blades closing in, and thinks this is where she dies. As Seola faces death, a memory of her grandfather reaches her. He offers his hand, and she takes it. Then the old man stands with his eyes shut and blood tears running down his face, turning the moment from comfort into a warning that someone is paying for this pain. Seola snaps back before the masked assailants can finish her. Her eye burns with killing intent, and she tears through both attackers before they land. One masked assailant sprays blood from the wound, and the other breaks in shock and runs. With one enemy hurt and the other fleeing, Seola has forced the attack to collapse for the moment. BU sees the attack on Seola and cuts straight into the swarm. Our boy thinks, is she still standing? Then carves a path through the fighters, trying to bury them both. The surviving assailants panic at BU's sword art. One man blurts out that no normal technique moves like that, and another orders everyone to kill BU first. They expect numbers to pin BU down. More blades close around him, and the dragon soul fiend roars as the battlefield tightens. But the next second, BU is already through them. The strike ends with bodies flying, and BU's sword sliding back to his hip. A wounded fighter stares at the dragon soul fiend in shock, while BU thinks, what is that thing still doing here? A battered survivor sits up through the blood and tries to understand what just happened. Nearby, another face lies still in the rain, and BU turns cold behind the mask. BU raises his glowing blade to stop the clawed attacker from reaching the kneeling dark-haired person. The claw lunges in close, but a bearded instructor steps in with his own sword drawn, turning the clash into a standoff over the person on the ground. The bearded instructor looks from BU to the bloodied ground with a hard stare. Seola narrows her eyes through the rain, still conscious, still trapped inside the third trial. At the third trial's edge, a fallen contestant drops toward the vortex as someone shouts for speed. The head instructor moves to stop the trial, and a younger instructor warns him that punishment will follow. The head instructor accepts the blame before anyone can talk him down. He says he will take all responsibility himself, then fixes on BU with sudden certainty. The head instructor measures BU by reflexes, killing intent, and an immovable heart. To him, the kid is an uncut gem fit for a supreme demon saint, so the trial ends with BU still alive. After the third trial nearly breaks everyone, BU stays on the throne path for one reason. The head instructor sees a future supreme demon saint in him, and stops the test before the last two contestants die. Inside the trial hall, another instructor steps in and reminds the head instructor that the trial was supposed to run to the end. With two contestants still alive, ending it early will bring punishment straight to his door. The head instructor does not flinch. He says he already prepared for the punishment, then grins and trusts his own judgment over every watcher from the 10 demon gates. After the trial, Sela wakes in an ornate room with no idea how she got there. She sits up dazed, and the first thing out of her mouth is a lost little question. Where is she? A long-haired physician from the demon field waits nearby, calm enough to make the room feel even stranger. Sola studies him and the compound around her, trying to place the center of the hell map from the window. At the table, Seola sits with BU and blurts out the one thing her half-awake brain can hold on to. Noodles. Tiny priorities survive murder trials. The smell pulls Sola back to childhood, when an elder fed her noodles and kept one hand on her shoulder. For a second, the trial is gone, and she is just a child being coaxed to eat. Seo Jinha is with her now, and Seola awkwardly thanks him for saving her. She thinks he dragged her out, repaid a debt, and ended the nightmare cleanly. But the next second, Seo Jinha shuts that down while eating. He says he only cut down the foe in front of him, then tells her the head instructor stopped the test himself and left 14 survivors alive. 4 days have passed, and Seola goes quiet as that number lands. He watches the room and thinks, 4 days? How much did that trial take from them? Then the temple bell rings across the hell map. One survivor stiffens and says the call summons everyone still left inside, so the recovery room turns back into a battlefield waiting room. The survivors move through the palace complex and gather on the red carpet in 2 tense rows. BU steps in with them, already reading the room like the next test has started. An elder points into the lineup and singles out one disciple for the Death Command Gate. BU thinks, Death Command Gate? Why him first? Sola freezes when the question lands near her. The chosen disciple points at himself in disbelief and asks if the elder really means him. The elder cuts off the confused disciple and points straight at his target. If the disciple understands, he has to follow. So BU watches the group move deeper into the succession hall. BU thinks Death Command Gate first, and now what comes next? Hell Blood Castle steps forward next, led by Vice Lord Jok Yahon, the 10,000 poison venerable. His poison is so feared that one flick of his hand can kill every living thing within 30 zhang, so his choice puts the waiting survivors in immediate danger. Then he points forward and calls out Seijina. Jeokya-hun offers Salah a successor seat in Hellblood Castle, the sect that raises poisoners. Salah stiffens because the offer drags her straight back to the bodies she left behind, not clean memories. Salah thinks Hellblood Castle wants her after all that blood, and Jeokya-hun answers the thought before she can hide it. He says she killed to erase evidence after failing, but Salah breaks and screams that the other woman planned it first and tried to kill her first. Jeokya-hun does not flinch at her tears. He says Salah can take lives for her goal, so her nature fits Hellblood Castle's poison arts. Then he lands the cut she fears most. Her talent for poison is far greater than her sword. Salah reaches up toward the offered hand, her marked skin showing this choice is tied to the violence already carved into her life. Instead of pulling away, she walks on beside him, meaning she is no longer rejecting the path being open to her. Then the pressure shifts to Bu. The current greatest demonic sword, tied to the Flame Rain Sword Clan, faces him with the main sect's offer. Bu thinks they want me under their roof now? Bu refuses the Flame Rain Sword Clan outright. Someone behind him chokes on the answer, then fury takes over as the main sect's pride snaps into an attack. But the next second, Bu does not back down. Bu holds his ground on the ornate palace floor, hand hovering near his sword as red slashes whip past his ear. He is close to drawing now, so the refusal is no longer just words. It is turning into a sword fight. Watch this. Bu declares he will go to Langya Pavilion, the Hell Domain Hall that teaches beast path techniques. The smile that follows is small, but the room hears the insult clearly. A voice repeats it back in disbelief. Langya Pavilion of all places. The main sect elder snaps first, furious that Bu chose Langya Pavilion over them. Two nearby disciples flinch because the room turns dangerous fast. The elder lashes out to punish the insult, and blood opens across a face before anyone can settle the room. One onlooker can barely breathe under his pressure and thinks even the aura alone is crushing him. The sword strike turns the confrontation lethal. Amid the red chaos, a bearded man is run through the chest. Whoever controls the blade has just stopped the elder's force with blood, and someone walks away while the victim is left impaled. The hall erupts as the elder charges, still shouting over Bu's refusal. His hand tightens on the hilt, and Bu watches the blade start to leave the sheath. Baekhyun, Langya Pavilion's deputy pavilion master, steps in before the drawn sword turns this into a bloodbath. He raises a hand and forces the attack to stop. A watching cultivator notices the room shaking and says everyone is getting nervous now. The pressure spreads from the elder to every disciple standing too close. Baekhyun smiles through the danger and asks them to let Bu go for his sake. Langya Pavilion needs at least one disciple, so he claims Bu before the main sect can claw him back. Saela breaks into a small laugh as the threat stalls in front of everyone. The elder warns Baekhyun to leave quickly before his sword moves again. Baekhyun accepts that warning and leads Bu away before pride restarts the fight. Sala follows and the main sect's chance to seize Bu slips out with them. Outside the hall, Saela walks close and holds Bu's sleeve while the group leaves together. Her quiet yes shows she is staying with him instead of breaking away. Bu looks back at the hall and thinks if they had not stopped it, how far would that sword have gone? The kid keeps walking, but the question stays with him. Bu lowers his gaze, measuring the rage he just pulled out of the main sect. Was choosing Langya Pavilion enough to make them bare their teeth already? The three of them keep moving together, footsteps steady after the near fight. Saela stays beside Bu, still close enough to catch his sleeve again. At the market now, Saela startles at the sudden noise ahead. A cheerful vendor laughs while talking, but the mood snaps when another man recoils with blood on his hand. At the market, the cheerful vendor points them toward the place they need and says that spot will do. Saela, still jumpy from the blood and noise, follows the direction with wide eyes. The Langya Pavilion master, the succession offer, brings them to the blacksmith, then prepares to leave Bu and Saela there for training. When Saela asks if he is staying, he only tells them to keep going without him. Then the cost lands on Saela. She repeats the word pay like it just bit her, but the Langya Pavilion master waves it off as a minor punishment that will not take long. The blacksmith smiles a little too calmly, and Saela realizes this punishment is coming from every direction at once. Two seniors close in behind her, and the poor girl looks ready to file a complaint with her feet. Saela tries to survive the mood by watching from the edge of the place, but every grin around her says training has already started. She peeks over the wall, spots someone waiting outside, and freezes again. Someone watches the kid closely while a silhouetted figure raises a glowing orb of energy. The observer's verdict is blunt. Whatever this kid is doing should be impossible under normal conditions. Bu feels the strange energy move and snaps onto the robed figure's wrist. The kid demands who he is, while his mind cuts straight to the problem. How is this body reacting before he even understands the method? See, the method is not simple breathing. A memory surfaces of a child being told it was a way to breathe comfortably inside a coffin, and Bu thinks, inside a coffin? Who teaches survival like that? Saela explains the name behind that memory. His family name was Bu, and his given name was Janyang. The old figure was once the vice lord of the demonic cult, feared as the seven-branched demonic saber. That name hits Saela hard. Her grandfather was tied to the demonic cult, but the word Shaolin throws her off, so she asks if he began on the orthodox sect's side. Which brings us right back to the trial in front of her. Dark figures gather in the haze, and Saela stands on the stone platform as a giant monk steps over her path. The monk introduces himself as Blood Vajra, and he does not waste time. From behind her, he asks if she knows the difference between orthodox internal arts and the demonic path. That question about orthodox arts and the demonic path finally bites down. Blood Vajra clenches his hand and tells Salah great things demand a price. Then the reverse extreme method erupts through the trial, and Salah gets thrown into the cost before she can answer. Inside the training vision, the method opens acupoints by force, so the body has to show what it is hiding. Blood Vajra watches the sweat bead out and notices it has no foul smell, then stops cold at the thought of what kind of kid could survive that cleanly. The vision pulls Biyu into focus, calm with his eyes closed while energy gathers in his acupoints. Biyu thinks 365 at once, then he raises both hands and lets the pressure run through him instead of fighting it. The ground breaks around Biyu, but this guy does not flinch. Blood Vajra reads the flow through the wreckage and settles on the answer. Biyu has reached the first stage. The first reaction comes from the body itself, with no foul waste leaking out. Then Blood Vajra, the monk guiding this brutal method, realizes Biyu crossed in half a year what took him 3. No tiny upgrade. See, the internal energy technique does not just add chi, it pushes that chi through the meridians and wakes up the physical strength Biyu had buried inside this young body, which brings us right back to the part that can kill him. The transformation should tear Biyu open from the inside. Blood Vajra sees the strain spreading and judges that one more wrong surge could leave him with a fatal internal injury. But the next second, Biyu clenches through the pain and forces the energy to obey. His eyes sharpen and our boy holds the line long enough for the method to stop being torture and start becoming power. After that, Blood Vajra lays down the rule attached to his help. The debt around the reverse extreme method must be paid before leaving Langya Pavilion. The monk tries to swear he will never forget the kindness, but the answer comes back flat and cold. No. Blood Vajra faces the sky as the long-haired man gives the order that changes the memory. Forget it all. Seola stares at the moment because this is not a harmless flashback. Someone is trying to erase what happened. Inside Langya Pavilion, the monk points Biyu toward the next wall. The 8th layer, the Great Origin State. Biyu thinks 8th layer from this body? The monk says reaching it someday is the only repayment he wants. Then sends our boy to Iron Prison Peak at the far end of the pavilion. Biyu bows before leaving, and the farewell stays simple. The monk wishes him peace, and Biyu returns it with the same calm respect before the path splits. 3 months later, the outside world has gotten uglier. Master Chiel, the information provider who watches the sect wars from close range, drinks with a grim face and says the Azure Dragon sect has been wiped out. That news reaches Biyu right as masked assailants cross the rooftops behind him. He turns, already measuring their distance, and thinks, here too? They moved this fast? The night stops being quiet. Inside Langya Pavilion, Baekhyun, the deputy pavilion master, gets called out by name while the hall argues over rules and new disciples. A smug senior tries to play it off with his chest out, but Baekhyun snaps that the pavilion rules are not a joke. The argument turns straight toward the 10 Demon Successors project, Demon Hall's plan to raise killers through its trial halls. Someone asks why Baekhyun once opposed it, yet still brought in a disciple meant for the Firestorm Sword Hall. Baekhyun only laughs and admits it. Baekhyun watches the challenge land and keeps his answer loose, but his eyes stay sharp. The others want permission, blame, and rank settled now, so Biyu's place in Langya Pavilion becomes part of the hall's power fight. That pressure pushes the training forward at Iron Prison Peak. A body technique instructor tells Seola that Swift Beyond Shadow turns movement itself into martial skill, and every past disciple failed once the form started changing mid-step. Seola should break rhythm the moment the technique shifts, but the next second he skims across the water and keeps the form alive while the instructor stares. Too clean. The instructor raises his fist and orders Sola to refine it in real combat. His first shout is pure surprise, then he calls the footwork impossible for a beginner, and by the time the spray settles, the watching disciples start whispering that another candidate has cracked Swift Beyond Shadow. Biyu does not get a gentle version of training either. He plunges through the waterfall course with Seila watching below, forcing his rebuilt body to move before pain can slow it down. Afterward, 2 pavilion men talk near the trees, and one flatly says Swift Beyond Shadow is not something anyone masters quickly. The other smiles because Biyu's supernormal neural core opened faster than expected, so this guy is already bending the training schedule out of shape. Back at the sealed grounds in the rain, the pavilion staff still cannot find the Langya Pavilion master. One worker complains that his absence leaves him handling all the menial work, while another smirks at the locked door like trouble is waiting behind it. Then the talk turns colder. The candidates are unsettled, but the 10 Demon Successors project was never just a tournament. Demon Hall wanted killers strong enough to cut down the great masters of the Orthodox faction, and Biyu has just stepped deeper into that machine. Baekhyun keeps playing his board game while Biyu corners him with the real question. He already knew the chosen heirs were entering the tournament. Then the news lands clean. Kang Miryun is dead. Biyu remembers the fall over the water, the shock, and the sword drawn against a cloaked figure. Wait, they sent heirs into this knowing people could die? That answer sits badly with him. Baekhyun drops the formal act and tells Biyu to call him Chief Bae, then asks why Biyu bothered relaying a greeting at all. Biyu stays quiet for one breath, then his face hardens. He wants permission, not small talk. The demand comes with strings. The matter with White Horse Sect and Flower Rain Sword Sect must be dropped completely. Still, official authority permits Langya Pavilion disciple Biyu to take the trial, so her boy folds his hands and accepts it. No argument. Inside Myriad Knowledge Hall, the elder lays out the ugly part of Demon Hall politics. See, Demon Hall pulls the 10 demonic sects together, but not every demonic sect actually wants to obey it, which brings us right back to Biyu's problem. Even permission comes wrapped in faction debt. The Scarred Man says it was done by your hand, putting the blame on the person in front of him. Hong Suho, the very name Sola, has hunted since the Bamboo Grove, stares hard at that claim, because the talk has turned from vague trouble into a direct accusation. The elder hands hands Bu a red token and explains it is the lowest of 3 ranks. The trial they demand is tied to that rank, so this guy inspects the cord like it might bite his fingers. Bakyan does not look worried. Elsewhere in the corridor, Jingak, the Huawu sword sect instructor from long ago, appears as a red uniformed disciple calls out in surprise. He turns with a pipe and token in hand, and the disciple stiffens at once. The warning settles over the rain-soaked city. The rivers and lakes are harsh, so the next step is dangerous, not ceremonial. Shadows cover the streets, and a narrowed eye fixes on the route ahead, making it clear the trial is already being watched. Back in Hell Domain, Bu has only earned a low-ranked opening toward his throne, so every side path now has teeth. Xiola walks the lantern corridor toward 2 waiting figures, and the hooded hunter answers with a blade and clawing shadows. Her eye snaps wide. Too late. Somewhere inside the hall now, Sulla tears through the shelves for the one manual she needs. She keeps tossing books aside, muttering that none of them are right, until a wrapped text finally stops her cold. Xiola lifts the manual marked Langya First Turn, and reads the name with a small, knowing smile. She clutches it close, already piecing together where the Langya Pavilion art came from, then digs into the pages before anyone can take it back. At the Grand Marshal Demon Arena, Bu steps into the test site with the red token still hanging over him. The young master has secured the chance, but now the sect representatives get to judge him in public. Head Yuan-sung, the elder overseeing the examination, sits with the other robed judges and keeps his face calm. The request comes from the White Horse sect and the Huawu Sword sect, both demanding proof that Bu deserves a place among the 10 demon champions. Before the blades come out, the elder presses the real condition. If Bu passes, the White Horse sect and Huawu Sword sect must stop chasing him over the past incident. The 3 representatives agree, so the arena turns into a clean bargain. Survive the test, and Bu walks away with one debt cut loose. A robed swordsman steps in to carry out the request from the White Horse sect head, and Bu waits with his sword still sheathed. The kid clenches his fists in front of the arena building, because this test is not about manners anymore. The swordsman opens with White Demon Heart Steel, aiming straight for Bu's life under official rules. Bu meets the attack, and the judge reads his stance at once. Decent fundamentals, but not enough to relax. The swordsman's next strike should force Bu onto defense, and the arena feels the pressure tilt against him. Bu stares into the attack and thinks, could this be one of their real killing forms? But the next second he moves into it instead of away. Bu drives forward through the broken ground and answers with a rising sword strike of his own. The exchange stops being a simple exam, because the White Horse side now has to deal with a disciple who learns while fighting. See, the Beastblade style hides its danger in how quickly it turns a feint into a killing line. Even experts avoid its secret form when they cannot read the angle, which brings us right back to Bu gripping his sword and asking himself, is that the secret killing form? The answer hits before Bu can settle his feet. He gets thrown through the follow-up barrage, and his eye sharpens as the next strike flashes in close. Bu stays crouched in the wreckage, blood running down his face, because the next line of the Beast Blade is already coming. His hand shakes for a second, then his eye settles. Can he read it in time? Inside Bu's head, the answer snaps back to the manual he stole through pain and panic. He remembers reading the warning and thinking, I'll die. Not ideal timing. See, the Beast Blade starts flashy, but the back of the manual lists its weak points in detail. Bu flips through that memory fast, searching for the gap before the secret killing form takes his head, which brings us right back to the ruined test ground. The Beast Blade should finish him here. Bu's guard buckles, his body gets thrown through the pressure, and the whole room waits for him to drop, but the next second he moves. The attack lands hard anyway, and Bu screams as the force drives him backward. He takes cut after cut, but his eye keeps chasing the pattern. Where is the opening? His clothes are torn open in the blast, but the swordsman's focus sharpens instead of fading. That single steady eye says the damage has not broken him. It has locked him back onto the fight. The Beastblade user cries out as Bu turns the secret form back on him. Bu launches from the rubble and brings his broken counter down before the man can reset. Too late. The test ground goes quiet, then the watching martial artists realize Bu is still standing. An observer stares at his snapped sword and ruined right arm, stunned that his will has not faded. Another voice mutters that this brat may not be human at all. Because the duel is finished, Bu closes the distance before the officials can bury the result. The examination side admits the fight is over, but the White Horse Senior still tries to challenge the agreement. That forces the sect representative to warn him that refusing the promise will break their pact with the Demon Division. The White Horse Senior tries to dismiss Bu's last hit as reckless, but the watching side cuts him off. A senior voice says there was no frivolous strike, so the pact has to stand. Bu stands there bleeding, sword ruined and arm wrecked, while the crowd finally stops arguing. The sect representative presses the White Horse side to honor the deal, and Bu's place as a 10-demon disciple is restored. The Langa Pavilion master pulls Bu in and pats his head, proud that his disciple survived the trial. Bu takes the praise quietly, but his body is paying for every step. Later, inside Langya Pavilion, the Langya Pavilion master checks Bu's dantian and finds pure true chi sitting there. See, Bu's broken body should still be crawling back from the duel, but his inner energy is cleaner than it has any right to be. Bu feels his dormant acupoints open and snaps into shock. He thinks, how did they wake up by themselves? The answer hits fast. The antipolar heart method has reached its third layer, antipolar firelight. That realm starts remaking his circulation, which brings us right back to the one problem Bu cannot ignore. Elsewhere in Langya Pavilion, Sulla tests her own hand and thinks the serpent's influence can no longer affect her. She still cannot fully believe it, so she keeps checking her body for any trace left behind. Then Sayola's faint smile widens, and her eye locks in with new focus. Her doubt is giving way to confidence, showing this change in her body may be something she can use. Back with BU, a vision of the white demon spirit serpent crashes into his thoughts. BU thinks, why am I standing inside the home of something this massive? Inside the Elder Council head's quarters, the Elder Council head pours tea as if BU did not just survive 2 brutal trials. BU spots the Elder and stiffens, because this is not a casual visit anymore. The Elder Council head praises BU for passing the Flame Rain sword test and the White Demon Spirit Serpent test. BU bows low and formally greets him as a disciple of Langya Pavilion. The talk shifts to Sayla's body, where her inner energy foundation holds steady under inspection. The Elder examining her admits he only recognized the method as a circulation technique after entering the sect. Sayla is told to come to the main hall once her Langya Pavilion training ends. That invitation waits over her next steps, quiet but heavy. Back at the pavilion table, BU presses down on the white game piece and goes still. He says he might grow complacent and fail to master Langya Pavilion's martial arts. The tension breaks for one breath as BU and the Elder laugh across the tea table. It is loud, awkward, and real. A sudden rush of movement cuts through the calm, and BU snaps into a sharp reaction. Whatever is coming reaches him fast enough that he has no time to stay relaxed. BU takes the hit to the jaw, and the crack cuts the laughter dead. No one at that table is joking now. BU lifts his cup and drinks, eyes lowered while he rechecks the Elder's words. The tea gives him a second to hide the calculation running behind his face. The Elder Council head watches BU closely, waiting to see which path he chooses. The next step belongs to BU, but the Elders are already measuring it. Back at the tea table, Bayu jerks up with his fists raised and thinks he almost died. He grips his hand under the table, replaying the White Demon Spirit Serpent and Flame Rain sword tests. Wait, those were not the real danger? Out in the windswept field, Sayola stands over fallen attackers and admits she has stepped too deep into a life she never wanted. Her stare hardens, because more blades are already coming for her. A dark-haired swordsman moves through the dry reeds with his sword still sheathed, then stops and draws it. His head turns into the wind, because whatever he has noticed is close enough to turn a walk into a fight. BU faces the 10 demonic hall's killers, and the trial stops looking like training. See, Langya Pavilion's beast path is not only about brute strength, it teaches the body to read threat, angle, and killing intent through movement, which brings us right back to BU watching every blade before it moves. Nearby, Sayla warns the attackers that she does not know who they are and does not want to kill them all. They answer by swinging first, so she stops asking and starts surviving. The masked fighters order their formation and rush BU from both sides. They expect a cornered disciple trapped on open ground, but the next second, BU steps into their formation and breaks the first attack from inside. BU catches an assassin's sword arm and forces the strike down into the wrong target. The formation collapses around him, and our boy clicks his tongue as bodies and blades hit the ground. One mistake, too many graves. The next attacker lunges, so BU shifts into the beast path viewpoint and reads him like a moving lesson. Can this body really keep up with what his old instincts see? He leaps over the strongest pressure point and drives straight toward the gap. BU's eye catches the last timing change, and he meets the blade head on instead of dodging. The masked fighter tries to reset, but the kid presses forward before the enemy can breathe. BU turns the close fight into punishment, kicking through one attacker and cutting another across the face. The last slashes carve through the group, and the surviving masked fighter chokes out that it is impossible. The masked commander finally understands their intel is rotten. The demonic hall told them BU never learned anything remarkable, and they marched in believing a spotted target would die without fail. The snake opens its jaws, but this mouse was never the meal. In the field, the last masked assassin tries to make death sound noble and asks if honor matters more than life. BU thinks honor from men sent to butcher me. The assassin expects fear, but the next second BU closes in and punches through his sword while snapping that honor does not exist here. The broken line finally collapses, and BU stands over the wreckage with another blade still reaching for him. Too late, he cuts the attacker down, and the dying man spits that even as a ghost he will curse him. When the field goes still, BU looks at the bodies and thinks, even after leaving Hell Island, this much carnage follows me? See, Hell Island was supposed to be the place people crawl out of, not the place that keeps chasing them, which brings us right back to BU laughing softly at the dead man's curse. On the road back, our boy glances aside because the failed assassination now has a sender attached to it. At the pavilion grounds, someone calls him Lord, and Sayla gets checked for danger after a small blade comes too close to her arm. Inside Langya Pavilion, the Langya Pavilion master laughs over tea, but the news sharpens fast. He says the old man who hunts people is still in full vigor, then admits BU's results are far beyond what he expected. Baekhyun, the deputy pavilion master, sits tense because the attack smells organized. He names the Martial Alliance and points to its Grand Strategy Hall as the likely vanguard behind the move, while the room starts treating BU's survival as a problem other powers now have to answer. The report turns uglier when the blood trail reaches Langya Pavilion's own disciples. A bloodied sword, a dead body, and the warning about underqualified disciples tell BU exactly what kind of cleanup is happening around him. Who is using this trial as a graveyard? The Langya Pavilion master leans in and says they need BU to witness true strength for himself. Then he turns to Baekhyun with a direct call to the deputy Deputy Lord, and the next order is already forming. Back at Langya Pavilion, Baekhyun accepts the Langya Pavilion Master's order and promises to carry it straight to Sojun. The Deputy Pavilion Master has already heard enough about BU, so the next step leaves the tea table and hits the chain of command. At Mansun Inn, Sojun, the mission handler being dragged into this mess, explodes the second BU's name reaches him. He snaps that he is not a nanny for spoiled kids, and the room gets loud fast. Baekhyun does not argue with Sojun's temper. He puts the Deputy Lord's wolf insignia token on the table and tells him this is a direct order, so Sojun grits out that he will choose BU himself and reject him himself. Baekhyun warns Sojun that BU is not the greenhorn he is picturing. Sojun spills his drink, grabs his wrapped weapon, and swears he will test the kid properly. Sojun unleashes red energy until his eyes go blank white, turning the test into a real show of force. BU is caught atop a massive glowing red hand, so this is no polite evaluation anymore. He has to withstand her pressure before he can be accepted. See, this mission targets a sect born from an apostate faith, and its crimes are ugly even by Murim standards. They traffic people, so both the Orthodox faction and the unorthodox side shun them. The strange part is that they still survive, which brings us right back to the mission route. At Wind and Thunder Gorge, Sojun lays out the real problem: the gale. Surveillance posts cover the path, so if the team shows itself too early, the whole mission blows open. As the group moves in, one veteran fumes that the job is already bad enough without a greenhorn tagging along. BU handles small throwing blades and thinks, can the gale hide his movement long enough to cross? BU tries to cross by launching off the planted blades, proving his movement is not the easy delay the team feared. But a long-haired man calmly raises his hand, and a spinning weapon whips into motion to cut off BU's advance. The gale erupts around BU, and Ciela, the only one here who knows how strange his body can get, snaps her eyes up in alarm. The blast throws him back, then hurls him higher instead of dropping him into the gorge. The witnesses finally understand what BU just used and gasp that it is Heavenly Ladder to the Firmament, a movement art that kicks off the instep to jump again in midair. Sulla sees him stay alive through a fall that should have ended the trial, and the mission team has to reassess the greenhorn they mocked. BU grits through the second jump and admits the trick alone is not enough, so the young master drives himself over the snowy peaks anyway, turning the trial into one more step toward the throne he still plans to reclaim. An onlooker catches the display as the silhouetted figure surges through violent streaks and red-white bursts. The move is no longer just motion in the air. Someone is watching him force the clash into a dangerous new stage. A slash tears across the open space and detonates in red impact marks. At the cliff edge, a hand reaches up toward the formation over the mountains, showing the mechanism formation is now being struck directly. Ciela catches the shift first, and the scarred team member grits his teeth like he just swallowed his own complaint. BU thinks, wait, the mechanism formation moved? The mission team has to walk behind him now, even if they hate how it happened. When BU rejoins the procession, he accepts the awkward silence with one tiny line. BU says, thank you. The braided teammate tries to turn it into praise, so BU snaps at him for wasting breath. BU admits to himself that the earlier test surprised him, but passing with that much still gives no one the right to brag. The mission is already messy enough with a newcomer attached, so the team keeps moving instead of arguing. Then the lead voice stops them at the next trial site. At the freezing wall ahead, the route drops into a brutal water trial. Everyone expects internal energy to be the only thing keeping them alive, but the next second, the ice erupts and throws one swordsman straight into the trap. The trapped swordsman panics as the cold locks around him. A warning cuts through the spray: anyone caught wrong will freeze solid. He does. BU sinks into the icy water with his sword still close, and the scale of the place finally hits him. He thinks ice crystals this huge under the water? See, this trial is built to drain martial artists who depend on circulation. That brings us right back to the one person who is not reacting right. Sala braces herself as the others struggle and sink around her. She watches them suffer, then realizes she has not even started circulating internal energy. No cold. Seola studies her own hand in the water, calm where everyone else is fighting to breathe. Her body reaches the realm of immunity to fire and water, and the trial loses its teeth against her. Still deep below, one figure keeps sinking with bubbles rising into the dark. After Seola survives the freezing water, BU's path back to the heavenly demon throne stays simple. Learn what this era kept, steal what it forgot, and break the trials in front of him. Underwater, Seola forces herself forward with one rough cry, while the test keeps trying to freeze everyone else out. Inside the trial's vision, BU moves among seated disciples with swords before them, watching how this squad trains under pressure. One fighter stares at Seola's calm body and chokes out, "Impossible." BU says nothing, but his eyes lock on the man beside him. The trial answers that doubt with violence. Seola raises her sword against two huge attackers, and the first impact throws the field into a brutal weapons test. The bigger fighter expects Seola to fold once blood hits the ground, but the next second, she slips inside his rush and cuts him open before he can crush her. A nearby fighter freezes, and BU watches the turn without blinking. A bald brute grins at the wounded girl and charges, sure raw power can finish the job. Ciela answers with her blade instead of panic, and the charge breaks apart in front of everyone. Clean work. The test spills into the Innovation Squad's real lesson, a multi-fighter brawl where every survivor shows his best killing habit. A braided fighter tears through opponents, and BU admits he joined the squad to grow stronger by watching masters who fight for real. As fists and blades fly, our boy stops treating the brawl like danger and starts treating it like a library. BU BU thinks, can I strip their timing before they notice? Then his smirk says the quiet part for him. He plans to take every useful art and make it his own. BU studies one attacker leaping in, then tracks Seola as she cuts down a white masked swordsman already bleeding from the chest. The watching fighters start muttering that the kid is copying the captain, and BU's eyes sharpen. Is that the captain's rhythm? Seola catches the next movement in time, even as a scarred fighter turns on her with killing intent. She sets her stance, closes the gap, and lands the strike before fear can slow her hand. The hit startles even Seola, because she realizes her sword is moving beyond the fixed form she studied. The lesson explains the change. Once swordplay reaches a certain level, it is no longer bound by patterns, and even a stance can carry intent. The trial breaks open as two huge fighters rush a swordsman at once, trying to crush him before his stance settles. He waits them out, cuts through the first opening, and one attacker staggers back bleeding. The nearby fighters gasp first, then the watching blades start tracking his hands instead of his face. Sola, the only person here still learning while people are trying to kill her, keeps watching BU even with blood on her greatsword. BU closes in and asks why she has been staring at him this whole time. What is she trying to steal from his movement? Two attackers press Seola at once, so she stops trying to win cleanly and fights to survive. She blocks, slips away, and resets her feet, while one fighter screams in for the kill. Not yet. A wounded fighter expects Seola to fold once the pressure keeps stacking. Her own body argues back, but the strain bites hard enough for her to admit this path will be hard to develop any further. But the next second, she switches tools and sends needles flying past a bloodied blade, while BU stands behind a pile of fallen fighters. The watching fighters finally put words to it. The kid has been copying the captain, and now he is coming forward. One man with a greatsword tightens his grip, another gets driven back bleeding, and the circle around Seola starts treating her like a real threat. BU watches that shift and thinks, is she copying the captain too? The brawl turns meaner because the blades are landing now, not just testing range. A wide slash opens a bleeding wound and drives the opponent back, making the exchange costly enough that BU stops in the rain and stares. That's it. An attacker swings the staff at BU, so her boy answers with the manual work he read before the trial. See, the Manga First Battle Manual gives him a frame for reading weapon rhythm under pressure. Without that earlier study, even this parry would have been a problem. Which brings us right back to BU raising both weapons like he just solved the exchange mid-fight. The fighters around him react in steps. First a stunned shout, then a rival muttering that the copying was real, then the whole group closing in before the advantage spreads. BU charges straight at the next bald attacker, and the follow-up strike tears through the hand reaching for him. The trial line breaks. More fighters pour in anyway, so BU stops testing borrowed rhythm and narrows his eyes on the fastest finish. He gathers true chi into the tip of his sword and releases it all at once to force maximum power into one strike. What happens if this body can hold it? A masked swordsman bursts out of a swirling blue portal with his blade ready. So BU is not just facing fighters in front of him anymore. Even after blood sprays and a severed hand hits the ground, the clawed woman still lunges in shock, which means the enemy pressure does not break. Under the night sky, another figure leans into view, and the fight keeps opening from new angles. The wounded fighter bares his teeth because BU is finally close enough to grab. He roars, reaches for BU's head, and throws everything left in his body into one ugly counter. Too late, BU answers before the fighter can finish the swing. Our boy cuts through with a bright strike, and the hit sends the opponent flipping upside down through the air. That counter is broken before it can land. Another fighter turns on BU and snaps that he has been watching them the whole battle. He expects the hidden observer to stay out of reach, but the next second, BU is already inside the fight. Salah pushes into the same mess, and the stronger fighters try to crush her before she can settle her stance. She gets hit hard, but she stays upright and forces the exchange to keep going. One fighter drops with his sword beside him, and the robed men move in to finish the rest. One of them orders the cleanup of the remaining small fry, and the trial stops feeling like a test. It turns into disposal. Sela hears that order and tightens her fist instead of backing off. The impact tracks stone nearby, so the survivors now know the cleanup crew is not here to scare them. They are here to erase them. Later, on a cliff ledge away from the trial ground, BU finally has room to think. He admits he has chased fast martial growth so hard that he barely knows the actual level standards anymore. What level is this body really at? A memory pulls him back to an elder he has not seen in a long time. The elder greets him over his recent achievements, and BU politely credits the elder's guidance while the old man smiles through the pressure. BU watches that reaction and starts recalculating. His earlier guess was wrong, and the feeling from back then was not a lie. Wait, did he touch a higher wall by accident? See, peak stage is where the body and inner force hit their limit beyond first rate. Above that waits the heavenly will stage, where a martial artist understands the will of heaven itself, which brings us right back to BU, staring toward that peak with a blade in hand. BU keeps circling that name in his head. The elder calls it the heavenly will stage, the realm where a master understands heaven's will and moves past the body itself. Too high for now. But that memory shakes BU harder than any clean answer. If his old sense was not wrong, then the strength he felt before was sitting closer to that wall than he expected. Wait, how far has this era really fallen? That question follows him into Seola's training. Seola, still stubborn even with bandaged hands, studies a sword move that rises from below by forcing bone and muscle to obey. obey. Then the talk turns to hidden weapons and poison, and her face tightens fast. Salah stares down at her own hands and realizes swordsmanship may not be the only road left open. She wonders if she now has to investigate people from the righteous path too. That lands badly. Across the table, the black-robed contact watches her wrestle with it, then offers the next step instead of comfort. He tells her he has a proposal. Siola goes still, because proposals in this place never arrive clean. After that choice opens, Yu turns from study to the kind of fieldwork that can give him real leads. Master Chell, the old information broker who keeps dangerous records, points him toward the 9 Killers unit. The name alone changes the room. See, the 9 Killers unit handles work the demonic hall will never admit to. Assassination, kidnapping, destruction, stolen resources, all the jobs that leave no clean signature. Which brings us right back to BU, because a hidden culprit needs hidden roads. The contact tells BU that investigating from his current position will be slow, but the 9 Killers unit can put him near the truth. BU lowers his head and thinks, 1 year inside that pit, then the answer starts forming anyway. Sayla understands the cost before anyone softens it for her. Joining means her name, her place, and maybe her whole existence get buried under missions no one claims. The unit is for sinners chasing redemption and desperate people chasing money. The warning gets worse. Demonic disciples in that unit become blades aimed at righteous path masters, used and dropped when the job ends. BU and Sayla stare each other down, because both of them know this is not training anymore. Still, Bu does not walk away. He accepts the 1 year limit, changes his face enough to stop drawing eyes, and leaves the room with the mission path set. Handsome problems, deadly workplace, rough combination. Later in town, BU moves under a conical hat and lets the crowd hide him. He reaches the marked building, reads the sign, and murmurs that this must be the place. So this is it? Inside the building now, BU slips through the corridor and checks behind him. The place looks too ordinary for a branch of the 9 Killers unit, so the young master keeps his guard up before the first door even opens. Inside the 9 Killers unit branch, the clerk leans over the records and asks if BU wants a specific book. BU answers with the fake target, Spring and Autumn Annals, but the title is only a cover for the real contact route. The moment the word contacts comes up, the room tightens around BU. Our boy watches the messenger rush in and thinks, contacts? Why does one word change the whole air this fast? BU opens the book, and the request inside is not about reading at all. It points him toward repeated kill orders, a battlefield soaked in failed attempts, and one name sitting at the center of it all. Black Serpent Blade Seokjung, the Bloodsound Evil Sect expert, has survived in the Murim for over a decade. BU knows Master Chell already fed him sealed information on Seokjung, so the kid reads the mission and thinks, this is exactly what I wanted. The request is dangerous, but not impossible. BU stands there with one arm bandaged, weighs Seokjung's reputation against the intel in his hand, and accepts the job without making a speech. That night in the alley, BU's contact brings the clothes and supplies for the next move. BU tells him to take them, steps past the body left on the ground, and heads for the gate with the bundle under his arm. BU does not waste time asking anyone to trust him. He says he only needs to prove himself with results, then carries the bundled clothes toward the gate, turning those supplies into the test of whether his next move can work. Back inside the branch now, the elder asks for the report, and the hooded messenger says BU is going after Black Serpent Blade Seokjung. The room snaps awake when they realize he means Seokjung from the Bloodsound Evil Sect, the sect running a second gate trial where only one contestant survives. At the docks, BU locks onto the simplest road to Bloodsound Island. He clenches his fist and declares he will ride in on a merchant ship carrying supplies. On the dock, workers drag crates and barrels toward the ships while BU blends into the noise. Men shout for hands, supplies move fast, and this guy slides into the flow before anyone can stop him. But the next second, BU spots the weak point in the crowd. A guard notices something off and reaches for his sword, so BU's clean entry starts to tilt toward exposure. Too late. The guard ends up bound overhead by shadowy figures, and BU walks forward with his sheathed sword while the dock crew scatters around him. Under the medical cover, BU lays out the tools and finishes the disguise. The startled young man barely breathes as BU fixes his collar, and the two dockmen bow hard enough to make the thanks feel scared. Clean work. BU keeps his grip on the young man's head and thinks he nearly got exposed at the docks. Wait, did one loose face almost ruin the whole entry? His fist tightens, so he fixes the mistake before the Bloodsound trail can go cold. See, BU learned the face change tendon shift technique from the Vice Leader. It lets him alter a face by force, not by makeup. Which brings us right back to Seokjung, because this guy now has the cover he needs to move tonight. That night, in the rain outside the sect pavilion, BU draws his sword and slips across the roofs. He has one job in his head: deal with Seokjung before the night ends. BU fixes his eyes on the way ahead, then commits instead of hesitating. He lunges through the rain with his fist raised and drops fast from above, turning the infiltration into a direct strike. From the rooftop, BU spots Seokjung below and locks onto his internal energy from a distance. But why is Seokjung standing there so openly? BU catches the sound nearby and pulls back, thinking it could be enemy bait. Inside the pavilion corridor, BU moves slowly between the red pillars with his guard up. Someone peeks at him from behind a pillar, so his caution matters. He is not entering an empty hall, he is already being watched. BU sees his golden chance and raises his sword to finish the target in one strike. But the next second, the room erupts around him, and BU realizes the kill zone was waiting first. A trap. Inside the weapon room, BU steadies himself among the blades as the ambusher steps in with his back turned. The man says enemies keep choosing this exact place for ambushes, then looks up and tells Biu he arrived at the perfect time. One victim already lies broken on the floor while the ambusher raises his sword over him. Biu leans over a large jar with 2 hidden figures inside and thinks the mission may still stay quiet. Then the ambusher grabs the serrated swords from the wall and invites Biu to attack first. The ambusher wants Biu alive long enough to break, so he grins over the serrated blade and promises to enjoy the pain. Biu grips his sword and steps in anyway, forcing the trap fight to start on his terms. The ambusher mocks Biu's swordplay, but his smile slips when Biu answers with Black Serpent Saber Arts. For one breath, it looks like our boy has found the opening, but the next second, the ambusher cuts across him and drives him back. Biu drops low, wounded but calm, and thinks, can I turn his own rhythm against him? He fires back from below, but the ambusher keeps pressing from above and refuses to give him room. Biu reads the delay in the killing blow and thinks, why is he holding back? Since the ambusher does not finish him right away, this guy rushes in harder and tests whether the trap has a blind spot. The ambusher catches Biu's attack and shifts into an upper left cut, laughing as if the fight already belongs to him. Biu sees the line too late, so the blade grazes close enough to take hair and force him down. Biu finally understands the trick, but the ambusher taunts him for moving too early. He turns the first strike into a feint and warns that even shutting his eyes will not save him. More robed swordsmen flood the weapon room, drawing blades to bury Biu under numbers. Biu plants his sword to the floor, lets them close, and starts cutting through the circle before it can lock around him. The ambusher panics when Biu catches the feint clean, shouting that it should be impossible to see through it. Biu gives him no answer, because Shadowless Extreme Speed is already carrying him through the next exchange. Biu tears through the last gap before the ambusher can reset. The ambusher recoils and thinks the same thing out loud. This is impossible. In the rain-soaked weapon room, Biu presses the ambusher before the trap can reset. The hooded target thinks one calm parry will save him, so our boy drives straight through his guard. The masked swordsman gets overwhelmed as slashes whip past his head, losing the space he needs to keep Biu out. Biu uses that break to come down from the shattered building with his sword raised, forcing the green hooded man to meet an attack from above. The hooded target reaches for the wrapped weapon at his chest and stammers that this is bad. Too late. Biu tightens his grip and cuts him down before that backup plan leaves the cloth. The target falls into his own blood and Biu stands over him until the room goes quiet. The raid has a corpse now and the knight has a name to carry. Elsewhere after the raid, Sang Rang relaxes over tea and lets himself chuckle like the knight is harmless. Then Maun, a shaken messenger chasing fresh news, bursts in so hard that Sang Rang spills his cup. Mayan blurts that Sukchung is dead, and the news hits hard enough to shock the gray-haired man listening. What was just a frantic interruption now becomes a real crisis, because Sukchung's death is being spoken aloud as fresh news. At the closed shop, Biu returns to the gray-haired broker amid piles of books, and the broker greets him like a regular customer. Then the details land, and the broker slams toward him, asking how Biu pulled it off. Biu stays quiet, eyes lowered, while the shop turns the dead target into paperwork. Wait, they pay this cleanly? The clerk announces 3,000 yang, issued as a voucher, and the old man nearly loses his voice over the amount. A bystander's eye goes wide, and then the room breaks into loud laughter. Whatever they just learned is no longer private shock. It has become open reaction everyone can hear. Inside the Akyang branch, an elder announces that number 18, their branch pillar, has arrived. This guy hears it while the room perks up around him, because higher authorities have sent a new mission directly down. Biu refuses at once and starts walking away. The smiling man catches the back of his robe before the kid can escape the job. The beige-robed man argues that term limits make no sense when they share the same pot of rice. Biu gives him one hard look, then concedes only this once. Past the doors, the new order points Biu toward guard duty instead of another clean kills. See, the man he has to guard is described as extraordinary, and that warning arrives over a city already burning with trouble, which brings us right back to the mission. At the high-class tavern, Sela, the poison-talented girl from the old trials, sits before a table packed with expensive dishes. Biu stands nearby with his sword sheathed, listening as the mission wraps itself around her. Sela lifts the veil from her hat and smiles, testing the false face in front of her. Biu grips his collar and snaps an alarm, because she has noticed a detail most people miss. A nearby foot shifts, and Biu snaps his head toward the sound, startled by someone moving off screen. He raises a hand as the young lady reaches for him and calls, "Uncle!" The warning lands late because his attention is already split between protecting her and the hidden movement. Okay, I talks fast, trying to pull her uncle into the moment, but Biu studies the room instead. He thinks, wait, why did the air change? Around the loaded table, masked attackers have already taken their places. One attacker commits first, sure the meal gives him cover, so Biu drops low and draws before the fist lands. The blade moves once, and the attacker blurts that Biu noticed him. His confidence leaves before the rest of him does. The ambush expects a helpless guard job, with 3 attackers closing in at once. But the next second, Biu tears through the opening group and sends bodies crashing across the tavern. The room understands fast. One masked attacker gets thrown back hard, while the gray-haired uncle laughs like the danger just improved his day. But Biu keeps his sword ready, because the mission is still to keep OK alive. No wandering now. Biu glances back and orders OK not to move more than 3 steps away from him. She startles but follows, because every extra step gives the attackers another angle. This guy is done babysitting politely. More assassins rush them, so Biu stops protecting space and starts clearing it. He stands over the wreckage and mutters that these pests are getting annoying, while another body goes flying. The tavern fight is over. Okay, I seize the slaughtered hall, the scattered swords, and Biu standing silent in the middle of it. The attackers came for for her, but now every survivor knows the guard has a blade worth reporting. BU narrows his eyes and refuses to return to the manor. I pushes for a disguise, desperate to shake the next ambush before it starts. Her uncle mocks the idea of dressing up like a rat, so BU moves the group instead of arguing. Pride can walk behind the sword. At the lodging corridor, BU tells Oki to stay behind him the moment they enter. A robed passerby moves too close, and BU thinks, more enemies here too? The safe house may already be dead. Outside by the carriage, an orange-clad attacker springs first, trying to end the escort before BU can reset. BU meets him head-on, cuts through the attack, and the man is blasted into the air while BU stays below with his sword ready. The next ambush has already failed. The ambush does not slow down after the first attacker drops. More black-clad assassins rush the pavilion, and BU cuts them away from Oki before they can close the ring. One assassin pushes through the rain, sure he has found an opening, but BU is already in his path, and the assassin chokes out that this master is far tougher than he expected. Near the veiled bride, panic spreads as blades reach the escort line. BU wonders, are they after Oki alone, or everyone around him? BU answers before the assassins contest it. He drops the nearest killer so hard that weapons scatter, and the bride freezes with her hand at her veil. BU spots Wu Manhuang, the exhausted uncle reaching his limit, blood running down his raised hand. Wu Manhuang still burns through the crowd to buy time for Oki. For one breath, Wu Manhuang looks like he can hold the courtyard by himself. The attackers keep swarming, and his wounded arm leaves him open. But the next second, the strike lands, and his severed hand hits the ground. Too many. Bodies cover the courtyard, yet more assassins keep pouring in, and even the fighters still standing start to shake. Wu Manhuang sees the line breaking, so he orders the others to take Oki and run while he stays behind. Then his pride cracks, and he begs them to go. I cannot leave Wu Manhuang behind, and BU does not waste the argument. This guy simply asks for a moment, scoops up the great uncle, and keeps moving. With Wu Manhuang carried out and Oki armed beside him, BU clears the escape route himself. The scarred attacker glares from below, but our boy does not give him the clean fight he wants. BU drives the assassins back in one sweep, and the command to move finally lands. The attackers are still ordered forward, but the escort has space now. BU closes in beside the bride and raises a hand near her face before they move again. On the rooftop, he keeps her right beside him, because losing control of her position now could break the escape. Outside in the night, BU launches through the collapsing fight with Oki in his arms. Assassins are thrown off the path, and the escape finally breaks out of the courtyard. Back in the rain, BU turns on the masked pursuer, trying to cut them off. He meets the blade head-on, and the next strike decides whether Oki leaves alive. Inside the bookstore, BU bursts into the secret storage room so fast the clerk barely gets out a welcome before choking on it. Master Chell, the mentor guide, is there too, and the room goes from quiet shelves to emergency shelter in one breath. The clerk panics and asks what is happening, so BU cuts through the noise and orders two fighters to circle the bookstore. The assassins are trying to reach the person under protection, and every door now counts. BU's temper goes cold as he listens for movement outside. Wait, they reached this place already? The nervous faces around him answer before anyone speaks. Gong, the fighting force dragged into this mess, grin when BU gives them a job that also keeps them alive. One of them snaps that they have to protect their own heads. Then both brothers charge out to butcher the attackers before the wave reaches the room. Back inside the storage room, BU turns to Oki and tells Oki to stay hidden until he opens the door again. Oki obeys, but the moment our boy steps away, the room feels too quiet. BU starts to leave, then Oki's wide-eyed stare makes him pause. She cannot get the words out at first, and her faint smile turns the delay into something personal right when he is trying to head out. BU turns back and begins to answer, softening just enough to cup Oki's face. He starts with his real name, but the truth catches on the noise outside before it can land. See, Oki is not just a target if the rumors are right. If Oki is Dan So-ok, then Dan So-ok is tied to the Demon Gathering Pavilion's master and chosen by the Elders Hall as the next Grand Inspector, which brings us right back to why assassins are flooding the bookstore. Oki grips BU's sleeve harder and demands the name he still has not given. BU only says later, because the attackers are already at the room, and this guy draws his sword instead of finishing the confession. The first assassin expects BU to be trapped between Oki and the doorway, but the next second, BU deflects the strike and cuts open the path above them, forcing the attack to miss its clean entry. BU moves out before the next rush can box them in. He thinks the attackers are faster than expected, and asks himself, did Gong already get buried under numbers? At the lit doorway, BU reads the pressure on the walls and answers his own question. The Gong brothers are not enough against a human wave assault, so the assassins keep smashing forward until the room itself starts to give. BU lowers his gaze and accepts the ugly part of the fight. When victory is not guaranteed, he stops waiting for a clean rescue and prepares to end the assault before the door breaks. Inside the broken room, Dan So-ok's name still hangs in the air. BU pauses at the door, and the voice outside spits at him for being an arrogant brat. Then the door gives way. The first wave rushes in with weapons raised, expecting one tired defender. BU meets them with both blades and carves through the nearest attackers before they can surround him. Too late. Dust fills the room, and BU checks the wreckage with blood on his blade. Did that finish them? He stands over the fallen bodies, but the noise beyond the doorway keeps coming. Bodies cover the floor, and even BU has to breathe through the mess. He looks back over the slaughter and thinks he finally took them all down. But the next second, another blade shifts in the wreckage. BU reaches for the next opening, but pain bites into him before he can move cleanly. A surviving assassin tells him to step aside, offering him a way out instead of finishing the fight. Why bargain now? The assassin raises his sword, and admits he is not offering mercy out of fear. He wants BU out of the way, because the real target is still ahead. The room has a new problem. The assassin presses forward through the bodies, sure a direct fight is finally in his hands. BU holds his ground and forces him to spend every step earning the distance. Then the assassin snaps, asking why someone who is not even an assassin is involved. That question lands wrong. BU lunges with twin blades, and the old shadow of his former style moves with him, turning one body into a storm of cuts. Sulla, the referenced one, sees it and freezes. Out in the rain, BU drives forward with both blades like he has stopped saving strength. The attackers wanted him to step aside, but this guy chooses the harder answer. He goes through them. The assassin finally understands the problem in front of him. BU is not giving him a clean sword fight, and the assassin thinks a direct charge is impossible unless he gets a heavy sword of his own, so he hardens up and reaches for brute force. The hall is already wrecked, bodies are down, and BU keeps pushing through the attackers before they can rebuild their formation. The assassin expects Wei to win now. But the next second, BU blasts him upward in a lightning-like surge, breaking the clash open before that heavy sword can decide it. Out in the rain, BU drives the fight higher and faster, forcing the assassin to answer every step. BU thinks a heavy sword now? Then our boy grabs the answer with one hand and names the stance. The assassin tries to crush him with the heavy blade, screaming for it like the weapon can save the fight by volume alone. BU takes the cut across his cheek, holds his ground, and steadies the edge. The heavy sword does not get its clean win. BU stands over the fallen attackers and tells the remaining threat he is too dangerous to leave alive. The assassin drops hard, wounded, but still lunges for one last kill. Too late. Then BU senses another presence and stops pressing in. He thinks this aura, who is close enough to make him hesitate. The assassin reads it too, and admits this new presence is someone he cannot guarantee beating. Cornered but not finished, the assassin tells BU he got lucky and promises to kill him slowly later. BU lands nearby, watches him run, and answers from cover that he will look forward to it. His confidence leaves one footprint and no body. BU sends a final slash through the doorway, and the blade trails drop as the pressure around him clears. When he is left standing with his sword lowered after the clash, the immediate assault has failed. Inside the room, Seila recoils when she sees who survived the mess. She reaches toward the wounded man and stammers over his identity, because the name is not supposed to be here like this. BU? Seila drops beside Master Chell, the information broker who protected her through the attack, and checks whether he is still alive. BU gives the name plainly, and the weak man on the floor hears it too. BU says that is his name, and Master Chell lies there breathing, barely holding on. Inside the ruined room, Seila freezes as armed attackers press BU for his name and face. Then a white-haired man swings his fist and screams for Soa, making it clear the ambush has another named target or ally tied to the chaos. Desperate to keep Seola alive, BU pulls her out of the blast and shields her through the last hit. Seola clings to Master Chiel, the information broker who protected her, and tells everyone she is fine because Master Chiel held the line. But the hallway is already filling up. The onlookers expected a few intruders, but they stare at the gathered fighters and one asks how many people came for BU tonight. The armed group points to the assassin's name, number 18. BU hears it and thinks, number 18? Then who sent the rest? The bloody survivor tries to keep his pride and says he only did what duty demanded. Too late, he kneels, admits he misjudged BU, and apologizes for treating him badly. Seila stays silent, leaving the apology hanging. Instead of pressing the kneeling elder further, the long-haired figure extends a hand, shifting the moment from humiliation toward acceptance as the elder studies him warily. BU clenches his fist because the attackers have names now, but not enough answers. Seila stands cold beside him as Master Chael promises that once they reach headquarters, he will hunt down whoever arranged this. BU reaches toward the red spider lilies, but the group cannot linger there. Someone calls for departure, and soon the palanquin and bundles are moving through the busy street, putting distance between them and the ambush site. Outside, anger follows them into the street as people shout over the failed ambush. BU watches Seila through the carriage curtain, and when she waves like she was not nearly killed, this guy stops just long enough to make sure she is really safe. A call snaps BU back into motion. He launches over the rooftops into the night, while the blood left behind tells the killers their quiet job has turned into a public mess. Elsewhere, the enemy command erupts. An official slams the failure on his subordinate, and demands how Wu Moon Huang, the elder combatant they tried to lure away, still became a problem. The subordinate realizes the higher-ups are cutting him loose and screams at the betrayal. BU's name is already moving through their side now, and the next order starts with panic, not confidence. The rescue party pushes out together, and the waiting crowd erupts when BU returns alive with the others. Around the pavilion, people raise their fists and shout his name, while the Langia Pavilion Master, the hall leader who controls its intelligence network, sends every spy after the instigators. The search hits a wall fast. The instigators have already silenced their own men, so the Langia Pavilion Master realizes the trail has been deliberately wiped and erupts in fury over the palace complex. When Baekhyun, Langia Pavilion's deputy master, asks about Sola, the report comes back calm. She shows no sign of trouble, but the assassin's trail finally gives them a name, number 18 of the Yuyang Branch 9 Killers Unit. And then another name sticks in their throats, BU. Later, near a quiet doorway, a bell rings outside while BU sits with his eyes closed. The quiet does not last. A gloved hand grabs his arm, stopping him before he can simply move on. In the memory, BU walks with his sword while an old companion leans in grinning, far too comfortable around a killer. The man waves a small drink cup at him and asks if he is drinking again today. The memory jumps to battlefields full of bodies, back when BU handles missions called impossible and comes back standing. Back then, he and the 9 Killers unit only trade assignments, but the drinks start changing that distance. A gray-haired companion reminds BU that he once planned to quit the 9 Killers unit around mission 18. Then the man drags him toward a snowy building, bragging about 3 jars ready for the night. Bad sign. On a snowy roof, the same companion calls out under the bright moon while BU drinks in silence. The memory feels warm for one breath, and BU thinks, did I really call them friends? Then the warmth breaks. A body lies in a pool of blood, a blade stands over him, and the next memory points straight toward demon gathering pavilions. A younger man screams as a larger figure closes in, while BU watches with that dead calm only he can manage. Beside him, the silver-haired companion shouts under the moon, telling them their job is to struggle and still live happily when things get hard. The companion smiles with his hand on his chest, and BU stands there taking it in without answering. Later, this guy walks away alone through the snowy corridor and mutters that those 2 old men are silly. The memory fixes on Information Officer Ma-on, short-tempered and arrogant but surprisingly pure when it counts. As he clamps a masked figure by the face, BU lowers his head with his eyes closed, and the hard close-up of his eyes shows this old name has become the focus now. Back in that old blood-soaked moment, BU stands over a fallen assassin with his sword ready. The assassin mocks the legendary killer of the Yueyang branch for being careless, and BU answers with silence first. Back in the present, BU keeps rebuilding his road to the Heavenly Demon's throne by turning each mission into leverage. The old assassin expects him to panic, but BU rests his sword near his shoulder and asks, who's careless now? The assassin's blade comes in first, so BU catches the attack instead of retreating. But the next second, BU cuts through the hidden paper trail and lifts the document the assassin failed to protect. The masked agent facing him raises both hands as BU holds out the proof. Another agent admits BU is the first to earn that level so young, and the room starts treating the kid less like a junior. BU does not celebrate. He looks at the document and thinks, why does this feel wrong? The new order names the younger Gong, the defensive fighter, as Murim Alliance spies and demands their execution. The men delivering it laugh through the report, while BU reads every line like a trap waiting to close. See, Gong was not demoted for disloyalty. Gong was punished after beating a demonic hall spy to death, and that detail refuses to fit the order, which brings us right back to BU asking the real question. If Gong killed a spy, why call Gong the spy? The order keeps pressing forward anyway. An off-panel handler pushes the mission, and the covered agent warns that refusing will hurt Langyao Pavilion. The handler corners Seola and forces the choice onto her as well. When she stays still, the masked man accepts it with a wise decision. BU reads the coercion for what it is and drops the mission in his own mind. No need. That frees Seola from killing Gong, so BU moves through the night before the order can settle. Rain hits the rooftops while our boy races toward the branch behind the command. On the rooftop, BU checks the old facts again. Gong killed a demonic hall spy, so he asks himself, who benefits if I erase them? At the Gyerim branch, BU walks straight to branch manager Jin Dong, the man tied to the order. He confirms the target's identity first, then drives his sword through him before the room can move. The servant chokes out in shock, and Jin Dong demands to know what sect dares attack him. BU answers by naming Langyao Pavilion, and the branch now knows who brought the blade. Word of the strike spreads through the agent network. One voice reminds them that every sect, orthodox or unorthodox, trains agents so nobody can hide behind clean labels anymore. Later, in a bamboo grove, BU gathers the group for drinks instead of orders. One of them admits he never expected the young master to invite them himself. Another man smiles into his cup and says being treated by BU in this lifetime feels strange. BU drinks with them quietly, letting the old memory of shared cups return without naming it. As they sit together, one of them finally speaks, so the quiet drinking stops being just a reunion and turns into a conversation the group has to answer. BU catches the ugly shape of the mission at once. The men in front of him are not just targets, because his own memory puts old warmth on their faces. Were these really the first people he let close after entering the martial world? That answer hurts, so BU grips his sword and accepts the part nobody wants to say. If they stand in his path now, he has to cut them down himself. No escape. Back in the snowy bamboo forest, BU faces the former companion-linked fighters without giving them room to plead. One weapon flashes past him, and the kid snaps awake to the danger. Can he kill men tied to that memory before they kill him first? BU fires a dart as he drops, trying to break their rhythm before the curved blade fighter traps him. The counter comes too fast, and the spear fighter drives him downward through the bamboo. He is losing height. The fighter facing BU believes the old gap still holds, so he flatly tells him, you cannot defeat me. BU surges in anyway, but the defense catches his blade and forces his feet out of line. For a breath, that threat sounds true. But the next second, BU changes the angle and rips his sword upward before the fighter can settle. The man sees the shift too late, and his anger breaks into panic as the attack bites through his guard. His confidence leaves first. BU presses the opening with one clean burst, and the fighter's shout cuts off inside the impact. The bamboo grove answers with bodies thrown back and weapons spinning loose. Done. See, these two are not ordinary blades for hire. One carries the finished arts of the 9 great sects, while the other twists demonic weapon techniques into the same fight. That is why BU has to read both hands at once, which brings us right back to the chain snapping for his throat. The swordmaster dives in from above, expecting his orthodox form to pin BU in place. BU catches the strike with the chain weapon and turns his glare toward the second attack. Our boy has no room for sentiment now. The swordmaster grins and forces in one last strike, mixing sect swordwork with the strange demonic weapon flow. Biyu yanks the chain tight, the bamboo forest bursts apart, and both fighters are hurled through the wreckage. The dead are waiting for names no one says aloud yet. Biyu charges straight into the crossing blades instead of giving the whip-like weapon room to control him. The two silhouettes collide head-on, and the burst of impacts shows this exchange is the turning point. It ends fast. In the snowy bamboo forest, Biyu stands over two bloody bodies and only asks why it had to come to this. Salah lies in his memory of the mission, and the chained man filled with arrows hangs there too, dragging every old attachment back into the cold. The dying man laughs through the blood and remembers Ma'un, the grieving witness, saying it felt like gaining a stubborn younger brother. Then he gives Biyu one last warning. An exposed agent has nowhere to return. Biyu hears it, sword still wet, and the silence does the rest. Biyu buries them in the snow and leaves their weapons on the mounds. He repeats the warning in his head. An exposed agent has no home left. What home was he supposed to return to then? Later at Langia Pavilion, the martial hall in Hell Domain that teaches beast path techniques, Biyu kneels before a blonde superior and reports the mission. Our boy says he followed the demonic hall's orders and killed Gong. The blonde superior only laughs first, then goes quiet. The blonde superior doubts Biyu told the whole story, so the report turns into an interrogation. Biyu thinks he threw away useless emotions for the mission, but the dead brothers still sit in his chest. Did he hesitate? The blonde superior gives Biyu no room to explain and tells him to follow. Out in the snowy field, the test stops being words and becomes a duel. Draw the sword or get cut down. The blonde superior studies Biyu from above and decides his defense has no openings. He expects the kid to bounce off that stance and expose the missing piece in his report, but the next second, Biyu reaches in and lands the hit. The blonde superior answers right away, praising Biyu's growth while saying he still falls short of his squad leader. Biyu takes the strike and gets thrown back with a rough grunt. The gap is still real. A sword slash rips through the air with energy streaming behind it. The attack is no longer just form or footwork. It carries enough force to turn this exchange dangerous. In the snowy training ground, the lesson starts hard as Seola drives in with her sword, trying to catch the opening before it closes. The strike lands clean enough to tear through the massive rock, and the watching disciple blurts that one stroke did the whole job. Baekhyun, the deputy pavilion master, names the level behind it. Ultimate Heaven Realm swordsmanship. Biyu watches him smile and thinks, wait, that strike carried more than one path, didn't it? Biyu moves again, but Baekhyun's lesson keeps folding every answer back on him. One strike from Baekhyun carries countless sword changes at once, so our boy stops treating it like a move and starts reading it like a whole system. Elsewhere in the training grounds, Sela admits that when hardship piles up, she clears her head through martial arts. The elder invites her to come find him anytime, and she takes the offer seriously enough to answer with full discipline. Back with Biyu, Baekhyun orders another round, and Biyu answers straight away. He grips his sword and steps in, expecting one clean exchange. But the next second, Baekhyun sends him flying. That hit forces Biyu to stop chasing a perfect copy. He thinks, if I can't master it perfectly, then what if I merge its essence with everything I've learned? Now the kid has a root that fits his own body. Biyu gathers the Huawu 13 forms into one strike and tests the idea right there. He drives a wide slash through the snowy clearing, proving this new approach can compress a whole form into one decisive attack. Baekhyun slips behind Biyu to punish the gap, and the strike comes bloody fast. Biyu survives the surprise, so the training turns from copying Baekhyun into rebuilding the form under pressure. When the blast clears, Biyu stands through the wind and keeps his eyes forward. The failed copy is gone, and this guy still has one more swing in him. Biyu plants his foot, cuts upward, and the finished form tears through the clearing. As broken trees and debris settle around him, he finally thinks it's complete. Biyu stands in the wrecked clearing with blood on his mouth and a sword still in his hand. The trees around him are cut down clean, and our boy finally lets himself ask, did I do it? He thinks back to Baekhyun's sword art, the one strike packed with every path a blade can take. Biyu tries to copy it as Heavenly Flow, expecting one clean answer, but the next second, the form refuses to stay copied, so he folds his own martial arts into it instead. A Langia Pavilion disciple rushes in and calls for the leader, then stops cold at the broken forest. He tells Biyu that his progress is serious, and Baekhyun wants him called back right away. Back at Langia Pavilion, Baekhyun is waiting behind the desk with that superior calm of his. He asks how Biyu wants to spend the next year, and the kid does not even blink before choosing the Jenghu. Baekhyun snaps when Biyu says it, because sending him outside now is not some tiny errand. Still, the Langia Pavilion master, the succession offerer, accepts the choice and picks Biyu's first stop himself, Dongpyo Serang. At Dongpyo Serang, the market town hits Biyu with packed streets, lanterns, and wandering martial artists everywhere. Biyu lifts his hat and thinks, wait, this many people? See, Dongpyo Serang started as a loose group of low-level wanderers running errands. Around 20 years ago, it grew into a huge alliance and began holding martial arts tournaments, which brings us right back to Biyu, who sits down first and starts gathering information. A young disciple approaches Biyu like he has just been handed a lifeline. He bows hard and thanks him properly, and Biyu returns the gesture without making it dramatic. The disciple admits he is grateful just to join Biyu, then keeps talking over drinks until the table finally loosens up. Biyu takes a sip, the disciple reacts way too strongly, and for one quiet minute, nobody is trying to kill anyone. Nice change. Nearby, Seola watches with a small smirk while attention shifts to Biyu's black ornate sword. The blade is known as a legendary treasure, set to cut even through a soul. Seola had worried Biyu lacked a sword strong enough for the peerless Heavenly Flow. Now the weapon answers that worry, and Biyu's next problem arrives before the the drink settles. A bystander storms in and screams that BU is a murderer and thief walking around in daylight. The whole market pause snaps shut, and every eye turns toward the young master. The elderly swordsman storms into the hall and points his blade at the muscular man, swearing he will kill him today for his sect leader. The scholar backs him up by begging the room to help punish a wicked demon, but the crowd only murmurs. Nobody moves. BU watches the whole thing over his meal, and the hesitation feels wrong. He thinks, wait, why is everyone afraid to answer? Then one diner starts to say those men do not understand, but the warning comes too late. The hooded killer cuts through the axe-wielding man before the room can breathe. The hatted swordsman sizes up a shaken rookie and tells him he looks brand new, but the rookie demands his name and gets answered with steel instead. The grinning bandana-wearing killer charges in with a large blade, and the attack immediately claims another victim. Blood sprays as steel comes down, leaving the men in the hall stunned because the fight has turned into open slaughter. As BU passes through the chaos, the rumor catches up first. One onlooker whispers that he may be the fast swordmaster who cut down Egok in one strike at the tavern. Another stares at the bodies and lowers his voice, because that name is already traveling faster than the blood dries. Outside the hall now, a confident robed challenger smiles like he has been waiting for BU. Our boy does not bite right away, and his first thought is simple. What does this guy want from my sword? The robed challenger tells BU he already knows he comes from the pointed spear sect. He also recognizes the blade as a weapon of that sect, so this stops being random noise and turns into a direct probe. When the challenger presses harder, the warning shout comes too late, and BU shifts before the strike can settle. But the next second, the challenger is already crouched above him, ready to drop in from the rock outcrop. See, the story around this challenger is not small. After only 1 year, he left the Murim Alliance and wandered the Jianghu, and that old record still follows him. Which brings us right back to the courtyard, where he tells BU to quit the tournament and go home. BU finally understands the demand and refuses without raising his voice. The young master turns away with a faint smirk, and the answer lands clean. No deal. The robed challenger draws his sword and admits BU has no plan to give up easily. He steps in, pleased that BU refuses to fold, and the duel becomes a test of whether BU can keep his killing intent under control. BU's eyes snap sideways as he catches the danger coming in. Before that opening can turn into a clean hit against him, he unleashes a powerful strike of his own and forces the exchange back onto the challenger. The spear-wielding challenger rushes BU to deny him distance, stacking another attack before our boy can settle his bloodlust. BU gets driven back over the rooftops, but he keeps his sword ready and asks himself, can he hold it back and still answer? The challenger presses from above, so BU lands, pivots, and forces his body to obey before the urge takes over. See, the last time BU let that bloodlust overflow, control slipped from his hands. Which brings us right back to this courtyard, where using it now could finish the fight or swallow him again. BU commits anyway, thinking what if this power breaks loose against him? The spear challenger sees BU hesitate and expects the fear to slow him, but the next second, BU moves through that fear and finds the gap first. The challenger hits the ground before his mind catches up. A nearby disciple stares at the fallen swordsman and can barely get out that it cannot be real. The challenger, shaking, realizes BU caught a split-second opening and turned his own sword strike back on him. BU's counter tears through the duel, and the challenger is thrown back bleeding. The man who tried to corner him now falls first, down hard. The courtyard goes quiet as BU advances with the same calm face, giving the challenger no room to rebuild his rhythm. A stray blade passes close, but this guy does not even flinch before his own thin weapon finds the mark. Rain falls as the defeated challenger kneels beside his dropped sword and admits he lost. BU hears the excuse forming and cuts it down cold, saying the loss is still a loss. BU stands over him with the wrapped weapon and gives him nothing to cling to. He tells him to go back to Mount Jemchang, and the kneeling challenger can only look up as BU walks past without accepting him. Across the room, the sly strategist sips from his cup and lets the tournament stay hidden for now. He only smirks and says, the details come later. Yu sits over the bracket paper and traces the matchups with his fingers. Then our boy pauses at his dagger and thinks back to the 9 killing squad where he used a different face. Was that old disguise about to bite him? A nervous messenger bursts in with papers flying, then shoves the scrolls into BU's hands. Before this guy can settle the information, masked assailants close in with blades, forcing him to read danger first and details second. BU follows the carved names and stops on Manhua, the wanderer hero. The old record says Manhua earned his name through righteous deeds, so even BU reads the room carefully. Not easy then. Indoors now, BU confronts a dark figure stepping into the doorway and demands his business. Before the intruder answers, claw-like marks appear beside BU, turning the visit into an immediate threat he has to answer on instinct. The intruder thrusts in with a heavy blade, expecting BU's body to give way. It doesn't. He freezes and blurts out whether that was Heavenly Axis Yoga. BU watches him stumble over the name, and the intruder quickly corrects himself to the muscle-reducing bone-shrinking art. Wait, he knows that technique? The man hides his fear behind a smug little lecture, but his eyes already gave him away. The wide-brimmed wanderer explains that most people here bury their past behind aliases, so BU should not trust a name too quickly. Then he looks up to ask a favor, and a robed figure shouts as the talk turns into a direct request someone must answer. BU stands calm as the order finally lands. Kill Manhua, his own opponent. He looks aside, serious now, with the tournament ahead and another false face to break. For BU, the road back to the Heavenly Demon Throne keeps narrowing into one clean command: survive the next blade, then